All right, looks like we are live. Let me just check something here. Yep, looks like we're doing good. All right, so guys, this is a kind of unusual stream. I haven't done a stream like this before. But so I posted this tweet. Let me share the stream with some people real quick. I can do it this way. So I posted this tweet, and in response to Joe Biden, and it says, so Joe Biden's like, today the people's house, your house, sends a clear message this to the country and around to the world. America is a nation of pride. And my response was simply that this guy is literally just daring God to do something at this point. Which, if anybody has read the Bible, I think you can kind of get where I'm coming from. For example, I have this pulled up here. So Isaiah 2, and if you go down to verse 17, the pride of humanity will be humbled, and the arrogance of the people will be brought low. The Lord alone will be exalted that day. Which is, and you can find lots of verses like this, like, you know, pride comes before the fall, you know, haughtiness before destruction, stuff like that. And so essentially I'm just saying, like, if I were to try to piss off God, another part of this is that, like, okay, so obviously there's the whole pride element, but also pride, it represents homosexuality in this case, right? And like, if you think about like Sodom and Gomorrah, like the two nations that were destroyed by God because of their homosexuality. Like, if I were to intentionally try to, let's say, piss off God and get God to try to destroy my nation, right? This is the kind of thing I would do. So I was just like, yeah, I mean, Biden's literally daring God to do something at this point. And yeah, I mean, it's not surprising I got a lot of new atheist responses. And I have not had a chance in a while to debate new atheists, despite hosting spaces on Twitter trying to get them to debate me. So I thought this would be a good chance to, one, respond to the comments, because they're interesting, and also to invite some of them to debate me live, and we can see if they want to defend their comments on a live setting, and maybe even talk about whether God exists or something along those lines. So that's essentially what the stream is going to be. Nothing serious, just, you know, talking to new atheists. Oh, I do want to note, so Matt Dillahunty, I'm noting this because he blocked me, so I'm not going to see his comment. But he responded to this in a similar way to how all the other new atheists responded. And I was just like, wow, I'm really bringing out all of the early 2000s new atheists out of the woodwork. They're really coming out of the woodwork. He responded to me by basically saying that, oh, well, I've been around this whole time and blah, blah, blah. And then he called me woodwork boy. I'm just like, really? Woodwork boy? That's the best you could come up with? It's so... I was actually at a casino at the time, and it's just like laughing while you know, having a drink, laughing at these new atheists. So anyway, let's start to take a look at what is said here and send these links to him. Let me just check something real quick. Okay. Yeah, I got the link ready. So let's start with this guy, Jaden. And yet he doesn't do anything. To which I responded, the divine long suffering waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, which few, that is 8 souls, were saved through water. And let me just come defender statements. Let's see.
What did I miss?
Oh, nothing. I just started responding to the comments. So John is also here, in the debate stage, for those who are listening. So yeah, so Jaden. So basically, where I'm at is Jaden says he didn't do anything, and I responded, the divine long suffering waited in the days of Noah while the ark was being prepared, which few, that is 8 souls, were saved through water. 1 Peter 3:20. So essentially what I'm doing here, so the idea of the ark is often analogized in the tradition of the church to the church itself. The church is essentially the new ark, and it's going to essentially save people from the coming destruction. The coming return of Christ is essentially how it's going to be. And so people often complain that, oh, well, that was 2,000 years ago. Why hasn't God come around? Well, Peter points out, well, while Noah was building the ark, there was a long wait before the flood happened. And so that's supposed to that gives us an idea of what is going on right now. Essentially, God is building his church at this moment, which involves bringing people to salvation, essentially, right? And so the long wait is actually a mercy for us, because it allows new people to be born, and it allows people to come out of their wicked ways and convert into Christianity. So there's a good reason for the long wait, and whenever God decides to, then the end will occur. So I don't think that. And also another thing with this, oh, God does nothing. Well, that just presupposes that all of the previous statements throughout history, all of the previous, like Sodom and Gomorrah, or Jesus' resurrection from the dead, that just presupposes that none of that actually happened, which there is no reason to believe that never happened. So anyway, so let's look at another one. So I thought God was all about love thy neighbor. Okay, the common misunderstanding, let me comment here. Yes.
Yeah.
It's all about love your neighbor, of course. But loving your neighbor means stopping them from hurting themselves. And yeah, I mean, sinning is ultimately hurting yourself, right? So there you go. Do you want to have anything to say, John?
Yeah, no, it is obvious that there is nothing virtuous of letting someone just indulge into their own wickedness and letting them hurt themselves. And of course, like a lot of people will say otherwise, that it's not really, there's nothing really wrong going on with what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like you have to understand that from what we are, saying is that this is wrong within a very different respect that it's kind of lost in at least in the common in the common consciousness of people nowadays. And we have led a lot of things that, people ask exactly as to, how can there be such depraved people of certain dispositions nowadays? Especially, with people like, the people that you find, for example, in those like serial killer documentaries and stuff like that.
So somebody commented, somebody wants the Discord link. Here, I'll post it in the chat here. Let me know if that doesn't work. I haven't tried it with a account that doesn't have it. So running Decade, actually, if you want to, you can just come and join the debate stage and you can give your point of view. He is essentially saying that he doesn't think anything's going to happen. And he says that God is very discreet. I mean, maybe something will not happen. Like, that's another thing. I never said that God's necessarily like going to rain down destruction on the United States. I just said that if it were the case that, if it were the case that I wanted to piss off God and I wanted to get God to destroy the United States, I would do something like what Biden's doing right now. And, I think it's very plausible that God would allow, say, China to come and attack us in some way and maybe even take us over, especially considering the fact that the way that we're behaving, the way that our, the way that our actions are going, we're definitely weakening our ability to actually defend the United States. Such as, for example, by saying that patriotism is no longer important. And today, I think a lot fewer people would be willing to like die for our country because they're very egotistical, and that's all related to this whole like you're special because you have this certain particular sexuality idea. It's all egotistical and not based on what's good for the other.
Yeah, the way I think about it is that in the end, judgment is going to come either way, and
right.
Everybody will have to answer to their actions and everything that they have done, said before God, and that's sufficient enough, for me to consider a lot of these things. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, I mean, God doesn't have to destroy us, but he could. And if I were going to try to piss him off, this is how I would do it, is essentially what I'm saying. Another example is like whenever the Israelites were, I can't remember specifically what they were doing. I think they were worshiping a female god alongside God. When they were doing something that was like that idolatry. Well, God allowed the Babylonians to destroy Israel and took them into slavery. So it's not unprecedented that, this sort of thing would happen.
The thing is that everybody is facing some kind of transgression of some sorts to this day. And we ultimately do, talk about these transgressions as a result of not necessarily our particular sins, but the one sin in regards to the fall in general. And there's, and we continue that sort of responsibility, and yeah, like it's like every day there is suffering. And a lot of people do like to point out to that sort of, well, it's not that they like to point out the suffering, but rather they point it out as to, how can, in every respect to, like God, and how can he allow such things? And we always come back, at least for those especially involved in the spiritual life. You know, we see this as a result of us, and not merely just like Adam as an individual, but Adam as a man, and you know, us also as man, as fallen man, in a way. And yeah, you know, that's something that at least those who are involved in that life, in the spiritual life, kind of, you know, get an awareness of, you know, like all, like, it's not like we ignore the suffering, it's that we make sense of the suffering in that regard. But yeah.
Yeah.
By the
So
way, I think that guy is on the audience here.
oh, okay. Hold on. Well, he hasn't. Nobody's requested. So if you want to come to the debates page, go ahead and request, and we can talk. But anyway, it looks like the stream might be having troubles keeping up with what's going on. So sorry about that. I'll see if I have to, like, if the video is good enough to keep afterwards. If you're listening on YouTube and you want, maybe maybe it's going kind of slow or something, you can go ahead and join on Discord. I put the link in the chat. Actually, can I pin this? I'll pin it to the top there. Okay, so let's see. All right, so this person posted a meme, and it's of Pope Francis. I don't know if you saw this one, John, but it's Pope Francis as if he's on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and it has a question. What is God's role in the COVID-19 outbreak? And here are the options. A, unaware it is happening. B, aware but unwilling to stop it. C, aware but unwilling to unaware but unable to stop it. Or D, deliberately caused it. What do you think? What's your answer, John?
I have to look at. Yeah, no, I have to look at the image because I think I grazed over it.
Okay.
The other day, but. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll just say my answer is B. God's aware of the COVID outbreak, but he's unwilling to stop it. Then again, the COVID outbreak's kind of over. So, but. Yeah, no, assuming this was back in, say, 2020 or whatever. Yeah, because, like, God doesn't stop evils, and that's fine. Like, any person who thinks that, well, you know, defines God in terms of has to stop all evil, like, if omnibenevolence meant has to stop all evil, that would obviously be immediately like, obviously this God doesn't exist. Like, so it's always so, like, dumb. Like, it's like, do you think that theists didn't have this idea that evil exists? Like, did they think that the person who invented the term omnibenevolence and said that God has omnibenevolence just thought evil didn't exist? Like, I don't know, but
well,
like,
evil in a very specific sense doesn't exist.
Well, yeah.
In a very specific sense, doesn't exist, and that, like, it's not something that is ontologically on the same plane as good. Right.
But the idea that they present is just like, well, God, you know, God must prevent all evil. Because of omnibenevolence. It's kind of dumb.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, but evil in itself is the absence of goodness. God himself is good.
Right.
But by his ontological being. So if God allows certain things like evil to exist, but if it only for the merits of bringing goodness in the future that can only be achieved with that thing happening, which is the absence of good in a certain place. I don't see how that disproves God being good either. Like God is just
they're just
using
assuming that being good or being God comes like with the obligation or being a moral agent, right? Comes with the obligation of preventing all evil that you can. Which that may be a reasonable position for like human beings, maybe, but for God, I don't see why that would be necessary. And this just comes to a point to where they're anthropomorphizing God by suggesting that God has to be exactly the same as human beings and have all the same moral obligations. So that's how I think about it. Because, like, essentially, for God to be good, all he has to do is be himself. Because the good for God is simply himself, because he is his own last end. So that's another issue with this kind of idea that, oh, well, we pointed out that God does this and therefore God must be evil. Well, that would make God's goodness contingent on creation, in which case he wouldn't even be God, because God is, the first cause and doesn't change. It can't be caused by other things. But whereas if his actions in the world made him evil, then he'd be caused by things in the world. So it's just like an anthropomorphic idea of what God is, essentially.
Yeah, we were just imposing a perception mostly on things that are really subjective. It's like imposing your understanding of physics on the actual objective law of physics. You have to obey the actual law of physics. You have to obey the actual goodness, not yourself. Yeah, I guess that's the way I would put it that way. I'm not sure. Anyways.
I'm going to add in Discord on here. Sorry for the ill-preparedness of this. But here we go. We got John and George here so that we can see who's talking. All right, but let's continue with these comments. I think I sent this guy a link. Yep. I seriously doubt any of these people are going to come. I'm going to try to stream for a few hours so that they have time to, be able to come. One person said that they wanted to come. Let me see. Actually, one person said that they would be available. Let me see if I can find them. I don't remember. Oh, I think it might have been under the Noah's Ark stuff.
Ooh, about the point of loving himself. So, I think... I'm not sure if we would like to speak on this, but...
Yeah, it's fine, go ahead.
We believe that... Yeah, so we believe that God is eternally love, because he's actually multi-personal by himself, right? He doesn't need an external to be what he's defined to be, like God is love, because he is love himself. The Father loved the Son eternally. The Son itself is not an external to the Father. He's internally begotten of the Father. So the love of the Father to the Son is eternal. And the love itself does not depend on creation. Now, we as creation, we only imitate the love which God is, right? To not to follow God's way of loving, because himself is love, could not be counted as love. So what God does for us in itself is love, right? We are only imitating the actual love, but our imitation is oftentimes not perfect, and hence why we sometimes deviate. Like maybe you think by killing certain individuals is a loving thing, but really sometimes they're perfect. I mean, our actions are not perfect. We only are trying to imitate the actual love, and I think that's mostly why I think we kind of do need
the thing
certain morality given by the church.
The thing that when it comes to talking about whether God's loving, we have to realize there's this sort of perverse view of God's love where people think that God loves them above all else. And that's really a type of egotism, to where they make themselves God. Because God, as all creatures should do, well, God's not a creature, but as all beings should do, right? God loves himself above all else, because God is the good itself. And so,
yes, the real love.
Right. God being love sometimes might include not necessarily doing the most loving thing for you. Like, because, like, for example, like, let's say, so, for example, like, say that you reject God and, you know, you're in mortal sin, right? Well, the most loving thing to do for you perhaps would be to just go ahead and save you and anyway, and somehow like force you to be a good person, maybe. But that's not, but that would be in contradiction with justice. It would be in contradiction with the good itself, which is God. It wouldn't be loving of himself, is basically how, I mean, there's some ways you could potentially get around to it. Like, mercy is not necessarily contrary to justice, but the point is that God's not necessarily looking at each person and being like, you know, I love you above all else, and I'm going to make sure that you have everything that you need to be happy. Necessarily, first of all, God's looking at what's good for him, and then, you know, hopefully we're consistent with that, with what's good for him.
Yeah, but my point really is that we really need God to be loving, and God does not need us to be loving. We actually need an external to love, right? Like, think about it. Love is something interpersonal. So if you didn't have any individuals besides you, cannot possibly love.
That's
but
true.
God is different. It's eternally multi-personal, right? He is independent by himself to love. And obviously, if you want to love, you have to be like God. You have to imitate Christ.
That's true. Yeah.
That's the thing. Justice is part of God's love. So if God has to do justice, that's part of his actualization of love. So if you're met over a loving thing done by God, that's not a problem. Yeah, that's the problem with you. You have to be loving. You have to be actually loving, not just subjectively loving. Objectively, you have to love, which is like God, the actual love, the eternal love.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another meme here. Oh, it's so long. I don't really. Why do people post memes with like walls of text? Like. But anyway,
just ready for you.
No, that's fine. I got it. It says God will judge America over abortion and gay marriage, and then he's like, so let's get this straight. God didn't judge America over the millions of natives that were raped and murdered and had their land stolen. God didn't judge America over the millions of Africans that had boulders tied to their legs and were raped and murdered, and you get the point. So,
oh gosh, this is
first
your argument.
First of all, it comes from a view that's kind of distorted because, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there were rapes that went on with like respect to Native Americans, but it was never like a policy of Spain, say, to rape and murder people, which is more like the liberal view of what actually happened. But that's not actually what happened. You know, just like any war, any war, unfortunately, there's rapes that happen because, you know, you have people who have power and are not being overseen by any other power. So that's one way in which this is different. It's that this is not a government policy. It wasn't a government policy to rape people, despite what they say. That said, I commented in response, like, ever heard of syphilis? Because before the Americans, or not Americans, before the Spanish came over here, there was no syphilis. And syphilis is a sexually transmitted disease. So, yeah, I mean, people, there was a sort of punishment, and that the people who raped natives end up getting syphilis and dying. And it spread throughout the nations as well, and lots of people died from syphilis. So, I mean, this is just not even a good example. Like, God literally sent a plague on the people who were doing this stuff. So, yeah, God did something about that. So why wouldn't you think he would do stuff about this too? And secondly, if you read the Bible, and you want to kind of pick out, like, what kind of things is God going to punish you for? I mean, you could say sexual sin. So if it were the case that it was a government policy that they rape people, yeah, you could say that's probably something God's going to punish people for. But just the key thing is, this idea of homosexuality. That's the key thing that, and pride that's the key thing that God seems to punish people over. But I think that's just because that's kind of like the end stage of a society that's in moral decline, essentially. They basically start allowing all kinds of sexual deviancy. The end stage is going to be bestiality and pedophilia, but
But I think they're just coping around this, to be honest.
What?
Yeah, I think they're just coping around this.
Oh.
There are evils, but you don't negate one when there are other evils. Yes, God will judge evils done by the United States, but the thing is that there's one thing that we can stop right now. You start from the point where you can start low. So gay marriage, abortion, this is happening in the actual life that you're facing. So that's one thing that people are mostly familiar with. Hence why people are more focused on this. But,
I mean, I think that they probably wouldn't agree with stopping it, though. Like, they think that it's probably morally good to kill babies and, commit sodomy. But anyway, that's a different discussion. Another comment. You realize if there is a God, he loves everyone, right? And to which I commented, he loves himself more than everyone else. Which is just going back to my same point that I brought up before. So, but I really do want to get to this comment though, by Benjamin Blake, Speed Watkins of Real Atheology. So
you really have to participate in God's love.
So Benjamin, he kind of became a thing because people like Trent Horn and such were like, oh well, these people at Real Atheology are the philosophical atheists, and they distinguish themselves as, we are the sophisticated atheists that are not like the new atheists. And I mean, as it kind of unfolds what they say on Twitter, it's seeming less and less like that's actually true. I just have to say. So he says in here, God, in traditional fashion, God does not do anything about LGBT rights. That is empirically distinguishable from a null hypothesis. Do you enjoy screaming at the void? Does LGBT inclusion and equality make you feel icky? Then Thomism might be just for you. So I mean, first of all, he's trying to suggest that well, God never does anything about LGBT things. People, and John pointed out, well, what about HIV? But excluding that, he's assuming that none of the things in Genesis happened. He's assuming that Jesus never came and rose from the dead. He's just assuming a bunch of things that obviously we're not going to agree with. So and also LGBT things, if you really think about it, it's only been a thing for 20 years. It's somewhat in the 60s, I guess, but a major issue that people were promoting and stuff like that, it's only been recently that this has been happening.
What's funny though?
What?
It's funny. He used words like null hypothesis. Okay. Now, the hypothesis is the claim that a relationship exists between two sets of data, right? Now, it's funny when you mentioned HIV, which is literally the cause of the homosexual activity. How is that not related to?
And then also
that you're doing?
You can talk about monkeypox too.
It's funny he used big words like null hypothesis without even thinking what it means, right? And that's a relation to homosexual relationship.
This is the hilarious thing, because he distinguishes himself from New Atheists, but null hypothesis is a major thing that New Atheists use. I believe it was I forget his name now, but there was a famous YouTube New Atheist who used this term null hypothesis and tried to argue against God based on this. And it's this is not how we approach the existence of God, by doing some kind of null hypothesis thing. Well, we're going to be using, first of all, we're going to be starting out with metaphysical arguments for the existence of God. In fact, this would be a good time to point out one of my responses to, because this is essentially what the claim is. So I said, this is the essence of the problem with every single response. The existence of God is known by considering the metaphysics of things, and that all things depend on something which is its own existence. Until you recognize that, you will explain away miracles with nature. And I continue, if you don't believe God exists, why would you consider miracles a possibility? If you don't accept that any effect could be caused by God, why would you be convinced that God caused anything, any effect? And so starting out this with some kind of null hypothesis, it doesn't really make sense, because it's not like we can start out with the belief that, well, we don't know whether God exists or not, and maybe God exists, maybe he doesn't, and then kind of test it using miracles, because you already have to believe all of these things about God, that he is essentially the cause of being, before you can even have accept that miracles would be proof of God. Let me illustrate this further. So I quoted Gary Lagrange here on how we know miracles are due to God. He says, we know the proper effect of God the Creator, being itself, and the miracles, at least certain miracles, appear to the intuition as of spontaneous understanding as an exceptional production of being, comparable to creation. And then I say, but atheists deny that being itself is a proper effect of God, so how could they ever be convinced that any miracles is from God. They cannot be unless they first accept that God is the proper cause of being itself. And so trying to use miracles to prove that God exists, the thing is, every single miracle you show to them, whether it be the resurrection, whether it be Fatima or whatever, they're going to always explain it in terms of nature because they think that nature can explain everything. So you have to prove that nature cannot explain everything, namely being itself, and then you have to show that these miracles are in fact, an exceptional production of being. So, right. So talking about this in terms of a null hypothesis is just it's wrongheaded. Yeah, and so he goes on. Does LGBT inclusion and equality make you feel icky? Like, literally all I said is that this guy is just daring God to do something at this point. Like, what in that what in that indicates that LGBT inclusion and equality makes me feel icky? I'm just looking at like the historical evidence and coming to the conclusion that this is like exactly what you would do if you're gonna piss off God. Like it doesn't mean that I think LGBT inclusion is icky. What is that? Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to respond in a bit. It says from Merkel. So the realist thing, as you previously mentioned regarding God's existence, the realist thing in existence is not us. We're just possible. But there is the necessary being, right? The ultimate beginning of all. So this being is not merely possible to exist. He is the realest thing to exist. If we don't exist, this being still exists. Even more real than universal, right? It's the realest of all. But I will now respond to this comment. Running Decade, I actually says, stop just saying God loves himself more than anyone else. It's so stupid. Turn people in there. Okay. So here's the thing. You as a human person, you possess good things not by yourself. You actually need an external. That's just a fact. For you to love anyone else, for you to even possess the ability to love, you do need a thing that's external to your being. But for God, it's different, right? For God, he is the community of love ever since eternity. He does not need a thing that's external from his own being to possess the ability to love. And for you to have this ability to love as well, right? You possess that from the ultimate love himself. If you deviate from the earliest definition of love, which was defined from the first community of love, that is God, right? It's eternally love. Then that just begs the question: do you really love? So this sort of argumentation, it can only work if you can prove Christianity is false. But I can prove in so many ways that that's not true. You can only possess the ability to love because there is actual love, and you merely possess it.
Yeah, we all participate. We all participate in love.
Yeah, so I think I just want to clarify in Thomas' interpretations. Saying when he said God loves himself more because, well, he is the actual love himself. The Father eternally loved the Son. And yeah, I guess that's my response.
I'm just sending some. I'm sending some links to some of these people because they're not really worth commenting on. This guy says,
God, if someone.
This guy says, "What?
Okay, this guy.
Well, nothing will happen since you're." So the stream you're reading might be a little bit off, FY. Because I think it's buffering on the YouTube stream. But anyway, this says, well, nothing will happen since you're God. Yahweh, is nothing more than a figment of your imagination. You call trans people mentally ill. Well, I mean, I didn't say that, but okay. Not that I disagree with that, but I didn't say that. What do you call people who believe in fictions and fairy tales? Did anybody reply to this? You made a great point.
Oh my god. Oh my gosh, dude.
I'm gonna send this over to both of these people. He should be able to see it in that comment. Whatever.
Your stream, by the way. Your stream is just running on the Discord.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you're right. Let me switch it back over to there. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so with respect to this, see my proofs for the existence of God. I mean, essentially, I have entire video series on this. I have a short on this. Essentially, the issue is that things do not exist in virtue of themselves. Like, they only have existence in a derived way. There's multiple ways of knowing this. The argument for motion, for example, points out that that things that change receive actuality from another because they don't have that actuality in virtue of themselves, which is necessary because if they had actuality in virtue of themselves, then they would already be actual with respect to the thing they're changing to. So there's a way in which the existence in terms of the things that they're changing to depends on another and is derived from another because it's not in themselves. If they don't have that actuality in virtue of themselves, then they must have it in virtue of another. And so you have, a cause of the change of things. Everything that is changing has to be changed by another. And so we have actuality or potentials being, so that the potential to change to be fulfilled by something that is actual with respect to that potential. And you could, have a regress. I'm being very vague because I have entire videos on this, but then you would have a regress of potentialities and actualities until you get to something which is just purely actual itself. In other words, it doesn't derive any existence, any being, any reality from anything beyond itself. It just is its own reality, and this is what we call God. And God's existence has been proven. It's not a fiction or a fairy tale. This has been true since Aristotle. This person says the same thing. Come prove God exists. Come and talk about it, please. Let's see if anybody comes. Okay. Kevin Dunbar. God takes no action when rape and murder and war is committed. Have you ever thought maybe God doesn't exist? When Putin invaded Ukraine and Putin, are you serious? Soldiers raped boys. I dared God to take some action. Nada. Okay, I mean, I don't think that the war is going so well for Putin. So, okay. Again, this is assuming a lot of things. I guess what they're looking for is some kind of miraculous intervention. And the thing is, God doesn't necessarily have to act through some kind of miraculous intervention. Another way of doing so is through human action. So, for example, God can allow the United States to send troops to Ukraine if you think Ukraine should win in this battle, and fight off Russia. Or maybe with respect to these particular rapists, God can allow a Ukrainian soldier to snipe these guys, right? So and why would God do it that way? Well, for a couple reasons. First of all, God, and part of the reason why God created the earth and people around him is so that they could participate inside of his goodness and love, right? Because the good is by its very nature self-communicating. If you think about the fact that, for example, if you love something, like if you love the topic of philosophy, for example, you will want to share it with others, because that's just the nature of loving something. When you love something, you want to share it with others. And so God, in virtue of being love and virtue of being the good itself, desires to share that love and goodness with others. And so, God could have people exercise his justice, because as part of sharing what his love is with others. So instead of directly, the reason why God may not choose to directly use miracles to punish people is for the sake of allowing us to participate in his love through justly trying and bringing about his justice, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's one possible answer. There's a couple others. Another point to point out is that suffering itself. If I mentioned this kind of at the beginning, if we just had this idea of God to where his entire purpose was just to end all suffering, well, that would make no sense. So we obviously have an idea of what God is, and it includes allowing suffering. Why does God allow suffering? Well, there's lots of different reasons. Ultimately, it's going to be for the sake of a greater good. And you might ask, well, how does God bring about every particular evil to some greater good? Well, we don't know specifically. I can give some examples. So, for example, suffering trauma, suffering some kind of hardship can bring you out of a state of pride and can bring you to repentance and to realize that actually you're not all that great in yourself and you actually do need God. Essentially that's it. And I think this is part of the reason why richer countries tend to be more atheistic than poorer countries, because poorer people are not as prideful. They realize that what the few things that they do have is thanks to God alone. Another reason is because through suffering we can love others in a greater way. So think about it. If somebody says that they love you and it's just like easy for them to love you, say that you have like millions of dollars and they're like the people around Trump, right, and saying, oh, I you're such a great person, I love you, you're a good person, acting like they actually care about you when really all they care about is the money, and it's actually just super easy to love you. When there's suffering and you still love other people and you don't just like retreat into yourself and become depressed and just make everything about yourself, when you continue to love people through suffering, that's more of an indicator of your character. It's more of an indicator of the good within you. And that's clear in the fact that, we don't give people medals for just like loving when it's easy, right? We give people medals for whenever, for example, they receive some kind of physical damage in war by trying to defend their buddies in war, right? Or if somebody died for the country, we give them a medal because they're doing something that's good through suffering. And so suffering is a way that we can have an ability to basically obtain more merit, to be obtain more merit for because like the greater charity that you have, the more of the beatific vision that you will have inside of the next life. The suffering can actually be a sort of a blessing, not in itself, but in the way that God can transform it into, doing, loving others. And a simple way of doing this is that anybody can do is simply by through offering up that suffering to God for the sake of others. The people in Fatima, Lucia, I think it might have been a different one person actually, but one of the kids in Fatima made a big deal about offering up their suffering for sinners, and they even gave up food, right, and suffered on purpose just so that they could offer up that suffering for the sake of sinners. I think that of how we should treat suffering. We should treat suffering as an opportunity to love others. So God might not intervene when it comes to supernatural causes like miracles. If you look through history, if you really think about it, all of the supernatural causes, the miracles that happened, had some sort of supernatural import. Either it helped the Israelites to come to a place which is necessary for Christ to come, which is of course supernatural, and a supernatural end, because God, Christ is God for one, but also it reveals something about God too. So the resurrection of Christ, for example, right? That was to prove that Christ was actually from God, and that all of the things that he said are in fact divine revelation. Whenever we're talking about things like the existence of the Trinity, which is derived from statements of Christ. So I think in general, miracles have or supernatural causes have supernatural ends. And so God is not out there just trying to cause miracles to solve natural problems. In general, he's using miracles for the sake of supernatural ends. And so I don't really expect God to necessarily end all suffering. I expect him more to end more major cases of suffering, maybe. Not even so much of expect, but I can see why he might do that, because it could lead to a very major revelation on the part of God, such as that, you shouldn't be doing these depraved sexual acts, I suppose. Anyway.
I agree with that. I think I want to insert something as well. Well, so suffering is part of God's providence to guide us. So which is more good? Everything is given to you at the moment. The moment you're born, you're just rich. And there is nothing you can do to achieve these things. Or rather, God gave you certain things to accomplish, and then you will achieve those things. I think the greater good would be that if you actually do something to actually achieve those things, right? There is a certain rewards that you will feel better knowing that you partook in this for yourself rather than everything is just given to you instantly. So suffering, it's a tool for a greater good. I think we kind of have to tell what is it to be the greater good, right? Sometimes it's just not better for you to instantly get things all bears is instantly, I think, a more achievable things. It would be better. And also to that it's very, very emotional. Like what do you why would you say that it proves that God is not all good? By just proving, well, suffering exists. Well, it's just part of his providence. It doesn't prove anything else than that. It's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sometimes
I mean,
you
they have
just-
a very childish idea of what is good. I mean, ultimately in heaven we do, it's going to be a greater good in a sense because, we're going to
Yeah, we know it's
have
we know
perfect
it's a greater
happiness. And also,
yeah.
but also we have to remember though that God doesn't necessarily have to create the best possible world. So, because there is no such thing as as the best possible world, because every possible world is infinitely less than God. So there's like always going to be an infinite gap between what's actually the best possible thing and other things. Oh, I think I found the comment by I think I found the comment. Sorry. Actually, go ahead. I have to go grab some food real quick, so go ahead and make your comment. I'll be right back.
But even then, in heaven, that it's a greater good than on earth because you actually felt what's previously on the lesser good that is on earth, right? So that's your experience, and what? Hey, it is actually a greater good. I can feel a gratefulness out of this. You can actually experience yourself. It is a greater good than previously on earth. You can somewhat argue that this is the possible world, but some people might disagree with that. But it's still part of his providence. It proves his providence just in this way. And to the previous comment, sorry, my stream was just kind of like, I didn't see the previous comment, but someone says, "Your Yahweh, your God," as if it meant something. Well, I believe that my God is your God as well. It's not subjective to my own perception. It's like saying, well, your law of gravity can only be applicable to me, it would applicable to yours as well. If you want to have a true life, then you have to think of the Trinity. You have to think of God. You have to actually, imitate God to actually be loving. It's not a subjective thing to me. I think he said your Yahweh previously is just to post at points where it's just subjective, where it's not.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back. But that was a good explanation there by yourself. That you explained.
So, let's go back to the Twitter thing. So, I think this is the person who's...
Twitter is just a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I think one of the persons here is the one who said they wanted to join or debate. Maybe it's... I don't know.
I'm dedicated.
I'm gonna send. I'm gonna send some links to these people because these people were like, "Oh, I dare you to debate Matt Dillahunty. Bet you don't have the guts to." I've actually debated him before, but the thing is, he has the way he does his debates is you have to go on his show, right? And his show, he has complete control over the mic, and he can kick you whenever you want. So essentially, it's an unfair ground, right? Because like, if you don't answer the questions the way that he likes it, and if you bring up, objections to his arguments that he doesn't like, then he'll kick you off and he'll shut you up, and he always gets the last word too, of course. So it's not really a fair. It's not really a fair point of place to debate. So I said.
I'm just.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Yes, I'm just genuinely surprised people brought up mental health to begin with, even serious atheists, which is claiming this is just nonsense. I remember there's this podcast by Cosmic Skeptic and Veganism, and Dillahunty was there, and they're both debating, and there's like the atheists themselves are just like, well, meh, Dillahunty is probably not good at this debate and stuff. It's just not the smartest atheist you can find out there.
No, he's not.
He's also holding this really, really serious, inaccurate historical position. So almost every historian would believe that Jesus exists,
Mhm.
but this bold dude who's not a historian is just, well, it's just unlikely Jesus exists. Well, by whose standard? It's just my standard. Even historians, when like serious people, they're not necessarily atheists, would claim this guy is just, man, this is a bald dude out of nowhere. Like, he knows stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
this has
less to do with his actual arguments, but I've heard he's also like married to somebody who's transgender.
oh my gosh.
I'm not sure about that, but I heard that.
That'd be funny, but I think Dillahunty debated Trent Horn at one occasion.
Who did?
I think Trent Horn did. Yeah, I think Trent Horn did get out of him.
He debated
Like,
Matt
actually.
Dillahunty.
Yeah, Trent Horn that he
Oh.
does.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, but
I think he debated like
barely
Jordan
provided-
Peterson or something like that. I don't know. I wish
I'm
it
not
looked.
sure Jordan Peterson, but
Let's see.
Matt Dillahunty is just like, he barely provides an evidence, but he's just going around the bush. That's the thing about him. He don't care. It's not convincing to me because, well, I just think it's not convincing. Well, who are you?
Yeah,
Like,
he.
I felt bad for Trent Horn though. He just done this researches, and it was just like, I'm not convinced. Oh my gosh, that was so tired.
Yeah, he did debate Jordan Peterson, which is interesting. I mean, Jordan Peterson, like he's kind of smartish, I guess, but thing is, he's not really he is basically an atheist himself, so not really the best
An atheist,
person.
for an atheist. Yeah. Oh boy. This guy also changes his views over the years. Like Dillahunty is just the type of guy you would think. Just,
Oh, but
I don't know.
I said in response to this tranny versus the world person. Wow. Trans lesbian. Does that mean does that mean that this person is just straight? Is that what that means? Trans lesbian. Oh, anyway, I said to them that I would only debate Matt Dillahunty if I get control of the mic. Precisely because that's what he does. I mean, I would debate him if we had a moderator, but like calling into his show is pointless because he's always going to get the last word, and he's just going to kick you off if you don't go, do what he wants you to do.
Well, to be fair, you can do that right now.
True, but I don't do that generally. You guys have been my space. I'll let people talk for as long as they want generally. But I'm also not running a show, so like a hour-long show. So that's another thing with it.
Man, but Matt Dillahunty though is just the type of guy you would think to just change his view over the week. It's just not really serious, to be honest. It's just doing it because it's fun.
But yeah, I mean, these people are all sorry to interrupt, but these people are all like, oh yeah, you're too scared to debate. All right, well, come into my space and debate. Well, let's see. I don't think they're going to. We'll see. You too scared, guys? Huh?
Those people on Twitter.
Well, I can't get new atheists to come anymore. I wonder if part of it is that 4G scared him away, because he used to come in these spaces and kind of just like yell at people. Do you remember that, John?
Oh, well, to be fair, he's scared all the right people.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not like 4G. It's just simply screaming to whoever is that is like,
right.
It's a very erroneous response. But 4G has this keen ability to know like when a person immediately when he knows that this person is not going to be very responsive to any way that you're going to talk to them.
Well, like he said, they're mentally ill.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about trans people right now. We're talking about atheists and materialists. Just FYI for all the censors out there.
We might get this stream blocked by YouTube in just a moment.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Whatever. I mean, I don't think I have enough viewers to actually get anybody blocking my streams. But who knows?
I actually have a YouTube channel that's like kind of growing. I can probably promote you guys in there.
Whose channel?
I have a YouTube channel that's like kind of growing right now. I can probably promote you guys in there. Let me see.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah. I bet YouTube probably wouldn't care less to block this channel because of this video.
Oh, I don't think we said anything against the rules so far. I mean, we're just saying that God might destroy America, essentially. I don't think that's against the rules.
Right.
Anyway, let's see. Let's go back. I invited those people. I kind of doubt they're gonna come. Go back. Okay. No, it's still not back. Okay, here we go.
Biden is literally not just like Catholic, just silly person.
Let's get into the hidden replies. Those that were too spicy. Do you guys go in and read like the hidden replies on Twitter?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, sometimes depending on the tweet that that I see.
Yeah.
Ooh. I would skip the blasphemous ones. I'll just read the yeah. Let's see. The best way to destroy atheist is okay.
Oh, I already sent them a link. Fake Sky King, rain your judgment upon us. I mean, I don't know if this even needs to be said, but God is not in the sky. I mean, he's everywhere in a sense, but he's not like some dude up in the sky. But hey, come and talk to us.
Yeah, every time we talk about height in scripture, when we read about height in scripture, it's always talking about the greatness and also the sublimity of his essence. It's not that difficult to understand that.
I think atheists mostly reject Christianity based on my misunderstanding. Let's say you're God, and your sky god or whatever. Without really thinking what we believe about God generally. How the most logical thing I can think of is the existence of God. Like it's the most realistic thing out there. Like not just a being out there in a space and just watching us.
Yeah, part of the problem though is that they are listening to people like William Lane Craig, who has a very anthropomorphic idea of God.
Not really.
Well, God is in time. His God's in time. But he's changeable. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's not like anthropomorphic in the sense that that's what he's directly appealing to. That's never really big. Every time I see him appeal, for example, to something like the Kalam, he's not really like pointing to something that you can say that is like corporeal. Like,
It is
at least immediately,
immaterial.
that's not.
It is immaterial. I'll give
Right.
him that. But it's kind of like, I don't know how close it is to this, but it's more the theistic personalist idea, which is closer to like this disembodied mind in the sky. Which, well, I guess it wouldn't be in the sky. This disembodied immaterial mind.
Yeah.
To be honest, the best way to explain God is just the classical theism view.
Yeah.
That's
Whenever I
how-
talk to atheists, I ask them like, what is the most proper definition of God according to the church fathers? And of course, they never know what that answer is, but I'll give the answer here. They say, go back to Exodus 3:14, where it says, I am that I am, or I am he who is, referring to God as he who is his own existence. That essentially, he who is it. That's all you have to say is, because is references existence. So all we're saying here is that God is his own existence. I am. That's what God is. He is existing. And in classical theism, just to explain to the audience, that's all that God is. God doesn't have parts. God is just, as the Catholic Encyclopedia says, God is just being itself, pure and simple, nothing more and nothing less.
based.
So, people will ask, like, okay, well, how do we know that God is intelligent? Well, we're just going to say that being is the same thing as, whenever it comes to God, his existence is going to be the same thing as his intellect. So it's not like a different part. It's that existence itself at its most basic is going to be intellectual, essentially.
Yep. We possess things that are good because God himself is good, right? We possess intellect because himself is.
Yeah, but
I
it's
guess
a
it's
totally
our
different idea of God than this sort of like disembodied mind kind of thing.
Mm.
Wow. Okay, I'm not even going to comment on that one.
But that's
all these
part of the
atheists.
ultimate-
Sorry, just let me say something.
I was-
The thing about
I was-
these
I was just saying-
atheists who are like, oh, I dare God, I dare God. Well, I would be careful. Like, if you remember, Jesus said that God's gonna come like a thief in the night, or judgment's gonna come like a thief in the night, right? It's not gonna be one of those things where, oh, I see that God exists now, and now I'm going to convert. No, you're not gonna have time to convert. So, I'd be a little bit more careful than being like, oh yeah, I'll just dare God. I mean, I know they don't believe that God exists, but I'd be a little bit more careful about it. Especially since none of these people have ever seriously studied, and I know this from talking to these people over like the period of 10 years, right? And this is not coming from lack of experience. None of these people have seriously studied the proofs for the existence of God.
Yeah, there is just very promotes like.
I guess I can get into the quote tweets because I just finished with all those.
Like pantheon amongst pantheons. That's just cringe sometimes to hear.
Yeah. If you if anybody in the Discord wants to join in the discussion, feel free to request, and I will. Actually, I'll just. Yeah, I can't invite you until you request, I guess. Actually, I might be able to just invite. Here, I'll invite this one person. Feel free to come in if you want. Or just feel free to listen. So, Bitmoji Brass. Let's send this person an invite. Zeus needs to get to work. So this is another thing that people often say is they're like, oh, which god? Which god? Again, it's confusing.
Well,
It's confusing God with like, you know, just like
pantheon,
another
basically.
another material being, like
like
another
so here, I think
another
the difference
finite
is-
being, because the thing is, God is not a genus according to St. Thomas Aquinas, because actually we could just get into that. Do you have any comments to make? I'll just look up that Summa article.
Yeah, it's the I think it's a fourth or fifth article in the third question.
I think it's in the simplicity, so on the third. And then
That's what I just said.
I thought you said the fourth or the fifth.
I said article, fourth or fifth article.
Oh,
particularly.
okay, I gotcha. Does he have genus and difference? So I don't know if this whole thing is going to show up on there, but this is where St. Thomas addresses that question. And essentially,
Well,
the reason
basically-
why he can't have be a genus is because you would have to have a specific difference by which, you know, God is differentiated from other things, and can't have a specific difference for existence itself because there's nothing outside of existence by which it could be differentiated. At least that's how I remember it.
But that's what. Yeah, but that's what like the previous four articles before that are trying to explain there. You know, the first one, whether God is a body. Well, God isn't a body because we understand as God is not, you know, it is devoid of potentiality. That's one thing.
Right.
And understanding that from God being necessary, meaning that he doesn't like a body depends on something, and if God had a body, then he would be dependent on something else. And so, like, you know, that's what like how the first article approaches, and then the second article, whether he is a composite of form and matter, and which follows the same line of reasoning from there on too, which is that, you know, we understand God as the first form rather than, you know, like a composite of form and matter, because again, that to have matter means that will make him dependent on something for him to be actualized. But since he is the, you know, actus purus, he is pure actuality, and then when he gets to the distinction of essence and nature, whether God is the same, his essence is the same as his nature. Yes, because we understand that the Godhead is not something necessarily that can be said to be have such a distinction of like of God. I would say,
Right.
in the sense of like being individuated, because the whole understanding of individuation is that there is potentiality there too, yeah. So like you cannot contain God in a genus.
Well, another problem,
in that sense, yeah.
like, so I'm just kind of riffing on my memory. I haven't read this article in a while, but another problem with this is that if God were truly in a genus, then all these gods in the genus would have to have something in common, right? And so, and St. Thomas has this other principle that what is in common cannot be because of what is diverse, essentially. So it can't be because this God has godness and this God has got this different kind of godness, that they're both the same insofar as they're gods. There would have to be something distinct, something that's not limited to any of those particular gods, to be the cause of the unity of all the gods into the same genus God. And so essentially you would have to have a god of the gods in order for God to be a genus. Which of course is repugnant to the idea of God. because God's supposed to be uncaused.
Yeah, but this also goes along with the understanding of being, and how being is also not contained in a genus there,
Right.
Which I would say that that's one way that one can approach the matter. I don't. It's a bit tricky, especially to bring it up in certain discussions. But anyway, that's just another approach there. Being is not contained in genus, and since we understand that God is being itself, that's another. That's just reiterating what's just explained, at least, and what's explained here in this article.
Yeah, I believe Porphyry's introduction actually argued that as well.
Yes.
I need to reread that because that was a good argument. Okay. So, let's see. This person says, might want to brush up on the teachings of Christ. Why is it so difficult for you ilk, I guess your ilk, to do as he commands? He said, love one another, not judge one another. People kind of already responded to this person, but essentially they said that, well, you're judging me right now. You're judging me by saying that, oh, you're not following Christ's law. So this is not really a coherent way of interpreting what Christ taught. Christ, basically, the way I interpret it, and maybe there's a better interpretation, is that Christ was essentially just saying, don't judge people to be damned to hell, essentially, I guess. Because we don't really know people's hearts. But that doesn't mean that we can't judge people's actions. Like, I can't... If I couldn't judge people's actions, then I wouldn't be able to know whether certain things are right or wrong. And I wouldn't be able to do the good myself. But... I don't know. Do you guys know a better interpretation of that? I haven't really looked into it very much.
I mean, we're really judging their actions, not themselves. We're judging whether they did things that are wrong or not. We're judging... I mean, it's weird. We're not judging their personal being. We're just judging what they're doing currently. That's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point... And also the whole point... Something he does say is that, hey, you can actually judge people. Basically, he says, remove the plank from your own eye, right? And then you can remove the speck from somebody else's eye. So that is in fact saying that, okay, that's not saying that you can't judge. It just says to make sure you're right with God before you do judge, essentially. Because the whole point is that God's going to judge you according to the standards that you judge others, right? And so if you're harshly judging other people, God's going to judge you harshly too. So be careful, right?
You're going to be held to the same standard as you are upholding others to that standard. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, real quick, we got some new people in here. Are any of you guys atheists?
No, I'm just here to listen in.
Okay.
No, I'm a theist.
Dang. You can never get atheists to come and debate me. Anyway. All right. Oh, atheist girl. I've heard of this person before. Yeah, she has 46,000 followers. Tree hugging, pro-choice, LGBTQ. In fact, I think I'll quote tweet her. So she says, "Your God slept through his chosen people being massacred by the millions, but sure, he's going to do something about the pride flag. It's really incredible how your God always hates the same people you do. Such a coincidence." Well, when did I say I hate homosexuals? Like, literally all I said is that, all I said was that essentially Biden's just doing everything in his power to get God to do something. That doesn't mean that I hate homosexuals.
What?
Maybe I love maybe I think homosexuality is a good thing, for all you know.
Yeah. What you understand from these people is just that they just always want to get emotional, like always. Even if you say, "Well, I don't hate homosexual," here's how I'm gonna prove I don't hate homosexual by teaching them what is right. That's an act of loving because you care for that person's own being, right?
Yeah.
And that's like,
You don't
well,
want them to
you're
go to
just
hell.
yeah, and even then, it's not just the spiritual realm. You're also gonna suffer physically in this world as well. It's not just something that's supernatural. You're gonna be down both worldly and spiritually. So it is the most loving thing. Well, to teach them what is right, to convince them. Well, that's not loving. Well, who are you? That you by your own standard? I mean, can you disprove that what I'm doing right now is not loving?
Right.
if
It's
I'm
essentially
right-
begging. It's essentially begging
Yeah,
the
if I'm-
question.
Yeah, if I'm right, that person really is them. If you're right, what will that person face? Like, we're just betting stuff in here right now.
Mm-hmm.
This Thomas reminds me of Pat Robertson saying, "What? You scroll down."
Hurricanes are God's wrath upon gays. Silly. Which if you note, I didn't actually say that. I didn't say anything like that. Like, I didn't say that any particular event was wrath upon gays.
Mm.
So, yeah. I mean, so that comment is silly.
Hey man, can you put it in dark mode? This is just burning my eyes.
Is there a dark mode for
Yes.
Twitter? Oh,
I think there is.
I
You
knew
gotta collect.
I knew there was on the
Hold on, let me
phone,
get-
but I didn't know that it was. Let me see.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh, I barely.
You gotta. Wait, hold on.
Let me see.
Can you click on the logo? I think it's supposed to be in there.
Where it says more.
Okay. Display maybe. Oh, there it is.
Wait.
Lights out.
Yeah.
All right, let me just refresh. Ah, there we go. Nice. I did not know you could do that on PC. Cool.
Wow. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, I
whatever,
actually
thanks.
talked to this person a little bit. He's not as irrational as most atheists, but you know. Anyway, this is another person. If God showed up and does something, it'll be the first time in history of the effing universe. Really? Like, have you never heard of Sodom and Gomorrah? Okay. You have to exist to be able to do something. Yeah, well, we already explained how God necessarily exists. Another way of putting it is there at least has to be one being which has existence in itself, because you know it's incoherent for everything to have existence in another. But that which has being in itself is just what we mean by God. So therefore God necessarily exists. That's the easiest way of arguing it. Now that doesn't prove that God is simple, but you know, you can make more arguments past that.
I found a meme that I saved up some years ago
Oh yeah.
of Matt Dillahunty. I posted in general.
Oh, if you send it to me, actually, hold on.
You can open it from the general to like a link
Yeah,
if you hit the.
let me go. I actually have I can put the display Discord on here. Welcome to episode 4319 of the Atheist Experience Show. Show me scientific evidence for God. Can't do it.
Well,
Tune in next week.
I guess it's just how do you get scientific method to begin with?
Yeah.
Well, what would you wanna use the method used for a scientific method? You know.
Yeah, I don't know. Does he think the scientific method is... I don't really watch his show. Does he think, like, the scientific method is everything? Like, the end-all, be-all? Like everybody else?
I'm not sure about that, but...
The thing is that you have scientific method to begin with because people philosophizing. Thanks.
Yeah, but the thing is that, I'm not sure. Like, every time I've seen a clip of Dillahunty, he's just mostly talking to, like, average people in general. And that's the extent of what I've seen from him. There have been, like, other atheists that were critical of him over his very, sort of, because him and Aaron Raw, like, were, like, more of that sort of atheist plus sort of side of things. And, you know, the whole, like, sort of feminist, more, like, feminist attitudes and stuff like that. So, like, the extent, I don't know exactly what his sort of philosophical background is, given what I've been shown on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had one encounter with him, and what happened was he basically I made the argument for motion for the existence of God, and he was like, so I was like, there has to be something that's being itself, right? Ultimately, and that's the same as what Exodus 3:14 says. And he was like, whoa, wait a minute, being, how do you know that it's intelligent? Because he's using this definition of being that doesn't mean intelligence. That means basically an intelligent agent. I was like, nah, dude, that's not what I mean. I just mean, like, existence itself. And then I said, well, but if you'd like, I can prove that that this being itself must be intelligent. And then he was basically like, yo, he doesn't speak like that, but he was like, hey, I thought you said that it isn't being, that being doesn't mean intelligence. You're lying. I was like, well, I'm saying I can prove that being must be intelligent. And then he basically kicked me off because he said it was dishonest. So he just, I don't know, he just didn't even understand what I was saying, either that or he was being dishonest and just kicking me off because he didn't want to have that kind of conversation. The other time I've seen, a friend of mine sent me a link of him debating him, and it was on basically pedophilia in the church, and he pointed out that, you know, public school rates of pedophilia in public schools are way higher than inside of the
hello.
Yeah, hey, what's up?
Oh, hey, my bad. I'm sorry for like leaving and joining this because my mic wasn't working, and I was like, my bad.
Yo, hey, are you an atheist, or are you just a theist?
No, I'm a theist.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
No, I wanted to join and like ask you a question.
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
So like, so I was watching one your video proving Christianity, right?
Yeah.
And like, low key, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't really understand a single word in the video say, but like I want to like to still learn like more.
Okay.
And like, I was like, what are some good books on philosophy? Because that's like, because I have friends like this Christian debate server called well, I'm not like advertising, but it's a Christian debate server.
Yeah.
And like, I have a friend there that like is really like good at like debating, right? And he has like he's like really philosophical, right?
Uh-huh.
And I want like some good books on philosophy.
Sure. So
The Bible.
Well, yeah. The Bible's good. But Some good introductory books would be, so Edward Fazer has a few good introductory books. So The Last Superstition, Aquinas: A Beginner's Guide, and 5 Proofs of the Existence of God. Those are three pretty good books to start out with. Beyond that, I'd recommend The One in the Many by Norris Clark. I think that's a really good one.
Yeah,
oh, you know that one?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, like, well, actually, I have a Twitter account, but I go by a different name. I actually, one day I asked you on your Twitter account, oh, which good books on metaphysics you have, and you gave me that, right? And I was like, oh, this looks cool.
Yeah,
but like, yeah. About one thing I'm afraid is that I'm not really gonna understand like too much words. So I was like, maybe like I can get like books that like how do I explain, like that are like that have like a really good introduction, like that are really like simple. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I can give one that's
Sure.
very readable. But this one's going to be both a book on logic and a book on metaphysics, which is titled a brief textbook on logic by Charles Copens, which is paired up with a brief textbook on mental philosophy, which is just understanding, like philosophy. It goes into metaphysics, and it goes into the fundamentals of things that you go with metaphysics. That you can start off with that. It's a very short one, in both of those respects, and it will lead you at least to some other things from there on. But Charles Copens.
Peter Kreeft has some books too, I believe, that are pretty basic introductory to philosophy. Do you know any of those, John? I think he's like an introduction. I think there's like one that's like yeah, I think there's one that's like an introduction to logic or something like that.
There's this introduction to Socratic logic.
Yeah.
And Noku talked about that one, but that one's with respect to logic. Oh, that's the other thing about when it comes to philosophy. Like, what are your interests too? Like, kind of like, what kind of like drives you to like know more about like philosophy, or like what is it, or like subjects and stuff like that, because that will also like help, like knowing like the area where you're most interested in can get you from like there to the other stuff. Yeah.
Oh, can you send me a link to one of those books?
Yeah, there's actually an archive of it. I'll send. I'll just post it. Yeah. I think I posted it in one of the channels here.
Which one is it? Natural law. Never mind. I was wrong. There's no links here. Is it?
I think it's metaphysics, right?
Yeah, metaphysics. So the first link that is right there, that's the one that I'm talking about. This is a very simple book. The first section is on logic. The second one is going to be on the things that you want to start off with, metaphysics. And it's very, like I said, it's very brief. And
thanks, bro. This is awesome.
Yeah,
because like I wanted to mainly read on metaphysics, because I remember I saw one of I don't, is your name pronounced Thomistic or
Thomistic?
Like, I don't, Thomistic. So I remember I saw one of your videos is being gay on natural, and there's the Christian debate I'm talking about, they have like a library server where like it's all apologetics, and like one of their channels it talks about like sodomy, and one of your videos was there, and I was like, oh, who's this guy? And I saw it and I was like, oh, this is really good, and like one of my favorite parts about it was how you described the you gave the definition of natural, right? And I was like, oh, this is really cool, because like I would always get into like debates with like random people in the server, right? And they would always give me like their own version of natural. Like they'll say, well, natural is something that occurs in nature.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll be like confused. And most of the time I would like sort of lose, but like people like help me and like just like help me in those type of debates. And so like one day, one of my Catholic friends told me like, oh, don't take people's definition of like natural or any definition like of any word. And then he explained to me like the definition of like he basically said all natural means like what is, and it reminded me like when I was thinking about it, it reminded me of like your video. I was like, ooh, I mean, I was like, and then I started realizing, yeah, I need to read philosophy more.
You know, another, not a book, but there's a YouTube channel called I think it's the Thomistic Institute, and they have this video series called Aquinas 101, and those have some very basic introduction to basic ideas that have to do with metaphysics, but also with other things inside of St. Thomas Aquinas' teachings.
Yeah, I've heard of these. I've heard of them before. Well, I didn't know their channel, but I remember I saw like one of their videos on the same library server that talked about the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, they have a video on. I think they have one on nature too, so that could be helpful.
Ooh. Oh my gosh! Thanks so much. I'm actually like I actually like deleted like all social media apps for like for 3 months because I want to research on like Christianity and like theism and all that, and then also philosophy. And I like reinstalled Discord because I saw like one of your I saw your live like, oh, atheism is bad, and I was like, ooh, I'm gonna join. And then as soon as I joined, I saw Discord. I was like, oh, I'm gonna join and see if I can if I can ask questions or something.
Yeah, no problem. The one in the mini though, it just so you know, it is meant to be an introductory textbook to metaphysics, but it might be a challenge because, you know, of course, whenever it's taught, it's supposed to be taught with a teacher who can kind of explain things and answer questions and stuff like that. But it is meant to be an introductory textbook, so you know it might be worth looking into still, like maybe after watching.
Oh yeah, I'll still look into it.
Yeah, especially the first chapter, which gets into what is metaphysics and what is like the purpose of metaphysics. That's usually a good place to know where to start off as to, you know, like just the fundamentals on that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool. This is really awesome. This is nice.
Yeah,
and also just keep talking to people around too, like just like whenever you're like it's even if it isn't like, you know, just the that you have doubts or anything of like something that you didn't, of a concept that you didn't understand or so, like just try to find people to talk about it.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks.
Yeah, so you have a debate server, so there are atheists on that debate server? Yeah.
If you want, I can send you the link, but if you want, because I was gonna say same, but I feel like that'll be kind of like advertising. I don't know if like that's.
I don't care, but.
Oh, okay, sure.
But I'd like, because like I can never find any atheists to debate. And it's
yeah, sure. There's like a ton of debates in the server. You can debate with like anyone, like agnostics, like Muslims.
And this is on Discord.
Yeah, it's on Discord. Okay. It's yeah.
I could get you some atheists to debate with. Would you be interested?
Sure.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay. Like I think I've invited like 20 atheists so far, and none of them have come. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, let's move to the chill.
Yeah, this server's gonna like probably save your life because like a lot of people debate like almost every single day on this server, and you'll probably like a ton of people there because like a lot of people, like a lot of them are like Catholics and all that. Like there are like, you know, Orthodox stuff. I'm sort of leaning onto it, but no, not really anymore. Can I send you the link in the DMs?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Send it to me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, send it to me too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right. John, you said you wanted it too, right?
Yep.
Okay. And who was the other guy?
That was me.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm not really that good at debating, but you know.
No, it's okay. You can like watch like people debate and stuff. That's like another thing. You can also like.
Sorry, I do want to address this comment, like, because like people always talk about how, oh, you refer to yourself as an atheist destroyer. No, I don't. I mean, that's what the pagans refer to me as. So, you know, I'm just quoting the pagans. And I mean, you know, whether they're right or not, I don't really care. Oh, Mr. Bear.
Oh, dude.
Jeez. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's okay. But question now, just like right now, while like I was in here, I also went to like the server and I was like talking to like this one atheist guy, right? And he said that apparently there's people like there's atheists that believe that objective morality exists, and I told him like you know if objective morality exists, then that means there's a God, right? I'm like, it's strange. I was like, what? Like, there's even like this girl I know who's an atheist in that server, and like they made up like a very weird claim saying like, well, even if God exists, and that means that morality is still subjective because he's saying what's right and wrong, and we're like, what? That makes no sense. It's like it's a good server, but like it's.
Yeah, I've heard arguments like that before.
Yeah, really?
Like, so they conflate the meaning of subjective and like make it like they define it in the wrong way. Essentially, they're saying subjective means that it depends on a mind is essentially how they usually define it.
Oh.
But that's not what subjective. When we're talking about subjective morality, that's not what we mean. When we talk about subjective morality, we mean that each person or each moral agent has like their own. Basically, they create their own morality, or it's subject to each person's opinion. It's not just that God, or just it's not the fact that God is a mind that happens to cause morality to be the case or whatever, right? That doesn't mean it's subjective. That's they're just equivocating on the meaning of subjective when they talk about that.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Actually, that makes a lot of sense because the way I explained it was like God like has infinite wisdom and like he's literally a perfect being. Like everything he spills is literally true. So, and that's how I explain it.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Are you an atheist?
Yeah, I'm agnostic. I'm not an atheist, but yeah.
Oh, about time. Did you come from Twitter or?
No, Richter sort of. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Just so you know the context, I had posted. Did you see Joe Biden's tweet where he was like, "This is a nation of pride"?
Oh no.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
that was funny.
I responded to that and I was like, yeah, I mean, basically it seems like he's doing everything it's possible to get God to destroy the United States.
I mean, like that was just him on the defensive. I think it's just that he's a career politician. Any like step he takes in any direction is going to destroy the United States in some way if he's in power. You know.
That's true.
Like, I don't think that was intentional. I think he was like genuinely just like, oh, well, we have to distance ourselves from these trans boobies, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, if I were trying, my point was like, if I were trying to get God to like destroy the earth or the United States, I'd probably be like, yeah, let's all be homosexuals and celebrate Pride.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it would take more than that, honestly. I think you would have to replicate like the seven levels of hell or something. Like, I'm agnostic, but I do think that like religion and like religious ideas play a role in society and stuff. So I think you like what you would have to do is like bring the seven layers of hell like up to earth, like basically Sodom and Gomorrah all over again, and then
Yeah.
God would come. I think, yeah, like that's just one like part, like just maybe like the surface. You're skimming like the icing of the cake, you know.
Yeah, that's fair. So, let's see. How should we proceed? So, are you familiar at all with Thomism?
I don't know what Thomism is. No, I'm actually basically very new to a lot of different religious things, but I'm still learning. I don't know. So
Okay. Well, you don't sound like a new atheist, which kind of sucks because I was trying to get a new atheist in here. Just seems like you're somebody's seeking, maybe.
right. The reason why I'm not like completely atheistic is because I was born Jewish, right, and I have a lot of like personal conviction in that. I don't want to call it pride. If you watch like maybe Ayn Rand, she says like I don't have pride, I have conviction. So it's the same sort of thing. I don't have pride, I have conviction. It's like my own pride in myself is not pride. So
Okay. Well, so just to, I mean, kind of get the conversation going. So essentially, Thomism is a philosophy that comes from Saint Thomas Aquinas. You may have heard.
I like him a lot, actually.
Okay, so you may have heard of his five ways to prove the existence of God.
I don't believe I have. I've just read about him in terms of philosophy. I don't think I've read about Thomism in particular.
Oh, okay. Well, he has in the Summa Theologiae, which is his like magus opum or whatever, like his major work.
Oh, okay.
He has these 5 ways for the existence of God. The first way is known as the argument from motion. The second way, I believe, is it's either from contingency or causality. I think it's from causality. And then the third way is from...
you can have I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to finish. The third way is from contingency, I believe, and then the fourth way is from degrees of being, and then the fifth way is from the from teleology, essentially from the natural tendency towards an end in nature.
So I think the fourth one is the strongest. The states of being is probably the strongest argument for the. But the other ones, I don't think motion necessarily like there can be God without motion. I think that's what I was gonna say. I don't think that like mediates the necessity for a God or some number of gods or whatever have you. You know, I don't know, like just like, because if you have all 5 of them, then you have one God, right? But maybe it's I don't know how it works.
Well, the idea, so in Thomism, we have this idea of classical theism,
Right.
Which is this idea that God's essence is existence, or what God is his own existence. And that's all that there is to God, really.
Right.
Because of
like,
divine simplicity. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. I think there's a difference between just like like normative movement and divine movement, right? So like I mean like you can have like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, right? That would be like something that's like if you've just discovered it, like wow, that's amazing, that's divine, that's something that I've never heard before. It's incredible, you know. But like if you just like if you're looking at like like wind make grass move or like make a garbage bag, and that's a bad example. Wind to make a garbage bag like float around in the wind, you know, like that's not like divine. That's not like like ecplastic or something. That's just like plastic floating in the wind and probably causing damage to like to like something. I don't know. It's a garbage bag.
Well,
I mean, there's a funny family guy bit about that.
Well, all I'm trying to do here is just explain what God is. So because a lot of atheists come at this like assuming that by God we mean like some kind of disembodied mind in the sky or something like that. So I'm just trying to make it clear that I hold to a classical theist view of God, so that when I prove or explain how art motion proves God, you're not just like, well, that doesn't prove a disembodied mind in the sky. So
yeah, I mean, I guess you kept the disembodied part because like it's sort of like he's sort of everywhere and in like one place at once, all simultaneously, like the set of all sets, But yeah, and I get you. Like you throw out like you don't like say, oh well, he's like this giant head in the sky like in Rick and Morty or something, and he's like trying to watch us dance, like it's not.
He's also
I get that joke.
He's also not composed of parts.
Right.
So he's just being. He's just pure actuality is another way of saying it.
Well, in Judaism, I know that we believe like that he's the parts and the sum of parts. So like he's like everything. Like God is everywhere and everyone and everything at once.
Yeah, so I would disagree with that because that would be pantheism.
Whoa.
I do think that God is everywhere, but I don't think God is everything, because that would make everything God.
He's in everything. I don't
Sure.
mean everything. He's in everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a part of you.
Well, that's I wouldn't say a part of me.
That still kind of sounds like pantheism.
Yeah, because that sounds like we're made up
Yeah,
of
like
God
God
or something.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
actually,
God
it sounds
is
more,
everywhere.
it
I
sounds
mean,
more like pantheism to me.
My understanding is not like crystal, like.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's okay, man.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just
I'm
explaining
just
why I don't
understanding.
agree.
No, I understand.
Yeah, no, because like we don't think that God can enter into composition with beings. Like we think he's completely distinct. Now, there is a sense that God's power is in us, in that
Right.
sense, because God is causing
Right,
us to exist.
Right. He's like there's like the animalistic thought process and then like a more divine thought process. And that's what is taught in the Kabbalah. I'm not sure if you agree with that. I know for
Yeah,
sure
I
that-
mean, in a way, yeah. Like there's the senses, and then there's the intellect, is how we would describe it, and the intellect
right.
is more divine.
Right, and like just getting things that you want like momentarily just because like, oh, like I have to have this, like I need it, is like if you go to the gym because you want like for the way it was explained to me is if you go to the gym because you want to like you want things for yourself, you want to have like a lean body, and that's your end goal, and you're being animalistic, right? Like animals do that too, but like if you're going to the gym so that you can like have like so that you can have like other things, so that you can like have like get a girlfriend and then start a family, like you're looking far into the future, and the link of chains that doesn't end as far as you can see, then you're being more divine, right?
Optimistic. I invited Rick Effect to the server. He should be joining relatively soon. Just so you know, to give him the talking thing when he gets here.
Okay. Yeah, but like, I think we can generally agree on that. But going back to the argument from motion, The thing
Right.
is with that is, so whenever something moves, right? There's like, for example, if we don't even have to talk about like motion in space, like we can talk about change in like the kinds of things or in accidents. So like if somebody changes their hair from say brown and then they like Destiny dye it blue, right? That's a change. And in order for them to have that change occur, they have to move from potentially having that blueness to actually having the blueness, right? The blueness is not just like innate inside their hair. They need some kind of blue dye to actualize the potential of the of the hair.
I mean, but that requires thinking, and then we're getting back to like states of being important. Like that's someone thinking about stuff. It's not like actually motion. That's like a different sort of. That's like I'm not sure if that example is. But,
Well, it's a state of change. So you're changing your hair, the color of your hair, right?
That's not really a motion. That's more of a state of being.
Well, yeah. The thing is, so the argument for motion had a much wider implication back then. So this is kind of more of like a language thing. People would
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, people would say motion, and that basically just meant change. And then whenever they were talking about motion in space, they would say local motion or locomotion, right? So you know, like a train is a locomotive, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a language issue, but yeah. So the argument for motion is often described in terms of the argument from change as well.
Right. So it's like a lesser version of because like when I think of motion, I think of like like maybe Brownian motion is something I would think of, and I don't really see like a lot of like I don't see like God in the luck of things, like in the like the pure like randomness, the chaos of like Brownian motion.
Well, the thing is, whenever it comes, to change in general, what I think is going on here is that you're going from potential to actual. Like you're starting out with potentially being whatever change is going on with, like either in the example I gave, potentially having blue hair to actually having blue hair. And I think in order for that to occur, the actuality of the blue hair cannot exist actually in your hair, because then your hair would already be blue, right?
Yeah.
So,
but like the whole point of that is that like they're thinking to be able to make that. So I honestly I think it's like not a solid, like a great example to show motion, because like when I think of like, just I know it's a language thing, like I realize, but it's just like when I think of motion, I think of like if I walk from like 2 steps in one direction, right? It's not necessarily like.
Well, I mean, just use the word change then. I mean, if you're not, if you have trouble with the word motion, it's just all it's just all semantics. So,
Sure. Like,
how do you get from this idea that behind everything, every property change, bullshit, whatever in the universe, there is this substance of existence that encompasses all of these processes, right? But how do you get from that it's actually conscious and interacts with the universe actively?
I don't think we got
natural problem.
Yeah, I don't think we got to even pure act yet, because like right now we just have. So I want to get there because I don't want to lose DMM, right? So I want to make sure we get there first. So so far we just got to the point to where it seems like potentials have to be actualized by something that's actual, or in some way. So I don't. So I think, so for example, when it comes to the hair, in order to change hair color, you need something that's actually blue in order to, or at least has the power to cause blueness right in it, and so, what in virtue which has some kind of actuality with respect to that.
So are there hierarchies of divinity? If that's like if like all of these things are like the proof that like there is God, and there has to be some hierarchies
Well,
like where some of these things do exist and some of these things don't exist in some places.
Well, I
it's not
haven't
all-
gotten to God yet. So all I've gotten to is the fact that there has to be something actual to actualize potential, right? So the way that you get to God is that you note that, okay, so whatever this actual thing is that actualizes the blue hair, for example, that in itself is either going to be actual or potential, right? And if it's potential in some way, then that potential is going to have to be actualized by another, right? And so you have kind of a regress going on here, where you have potential thing being actualized by something that's actual, and that potential is like derived from something else that is actual, and so you have potential, actual, potential, actual, potential, actual. So
Right.
in order to stop the regress, you have to get to something that doesn't derive its actuality from another, something that is just purely actual in itself. And
I realize I know that argument. That's the original Cog argument.
I sure, but anyway, so that's how we get to something which is just existence itself, or pure act, right? Something that doesn't derive its actuality from anything else. And by my definition of God, there we go. We have God, essentially.
I don't have a problem with this basic idea. The one thing I would point out, though, is that we don't know what the laws of physics were like in the first opening seconds of the universe. And I mean, like literally the first opening seconds of the universe. It's possible that the laws of physics were radically different at that time, and that you don't need something that started movement or started actualization.
Well, a couple things. First of all, this argument doesn't really have anything to do necessarily with the beginning of the universe. Aristotle himself thought that the universe was eternal. So
Sure.
So this has more to do, so they thought that actually causality, whenever it comes to these kind of causes, per se causes, are simultaneous. And so the first cause of the say changing of the hair blue, say, is going to be simultaneous with the changing of the hair to be blue. So both of the cause and the effect are going to be simultaneous, and also the first cause is going to be simultaneous with that as well. So even if the laws of physics were different in the past, and somehow that meant that these principles don't apply then, they do definitely apply now, which would mean that God wouldn't be necessarily here right now causing things to exist. So we still get God that way. But I mean, I would...
Do we?
Yeah, because we get something that's, purely actual, that's causing
you have
everything.
a prime mover, but you don't have a god. That's the
that's not the same thing.
I think God begs
it depends
itself.
on how you define God, but whatever.
Yeah,
I think God begs itself to be like a thing in actuality, like, because like so many people want there to be like something like out there at the beginning of the universe that like eventually and here's my theory, the races of beings will like travel backwards towards the beginning of the universe and organize something that makes a godlike presence possible, and it would just be like an automatic, at first, an automaton sort of like being, atomiconic being.
That's very Nicolandian of you.
Yeah, but anyway, so I would say that it is God, and that's because I have like probably a different view of God than you guys do. I don't know if you heard my explanation earlier, but you know, as a classical theist, my definition of God is just that he is his own existence, right? So he is everything that he is in virtue of himself and not in virtue of another, right?
But what I'm saying is that he didn't come first, right? Like at first there was the universe, there was the seed, then the universe came forth, and then like all this motion, chaos.
Well, if God is outside of the universe, then God can still have come first. Like,
right.
But then I'm just my issue is with this whole like first mover thing. Like just because like I don't think the first mover thing is a good argument for God. Is basically where I'm at.
Right.
Because
even
you don't
if there
really need a
is
first mover. The universe could just exist by itself, and you don't specifically need a prime mover. It's just inferred. Oh, you must need it because cause and effect, and you get back to Aristotle's position of just there must be a prime mover. But that's just a general misunderstanding of the law of identity, which is that entities act according to their potentiality and what they are, not according to just all effects are brought by their causes, and you regress from that, and then there must be a God.
Wait, I have a question. What do you think the misunderstanding is? What do you think the misunderstanding?
Well, the misunderstanding is that you don't really need a prime mover, and if there is no prime mover,
why not?
Evidence.
Why not?
Well, the universe can just exist by itself. It doesn't need to, whatever reason.
No, there's a difference between talking about why the universe exists, period, why there's matter, and
it doesn't matter why
matter's in motion ever, right? Let's assume that there's something before the Big Bang and the universe has always existed in some different form.
You can't make that inference because there's no evidence for that. So
but would you agree that if the universe did not always exist, if physical reality did not always exist, then there's a beginning of it, and so it had to come from something. So then that would be caused by some being outside the universe, right?
You can have a seed without having a seed planter. Like that's the whole point. And even if we do have a seed planter, you can't say, "Oh, the seed planter is good. He wants the best for the tree." No, he's there to pluck the apples. He's not there for the tree.
We need to start we need to not get ahead of ourselves here. Like first, we need to establish whether there's an actual prime mover, right? And then we can talk about whether the prime mover is good and whether he has an intellect and that kind of thing, I think.
Can we lay down as a ground rule that if there is a beginning of time, if the past is not eternal, then the universe came to be from nothing, and there must have been some cause that was not part of the universe that made it. So there would be a God. But if the universe is eternal, right, then the existence of the universe does not directly, then the eternity of time means a different argument needs to be made.
What's the beginning of the time? What's the beginning of time for a single apple tree? A single apple tree that exists today. It's when it was a seed, right? So it grows and then it dies, right? It's the same thing with the universe. Huh?
But the seed came from something.
Okay, so everything comes from something. Like we're probably not the only universe.
It either came from a previous physical reality, like another universe, which would mean that the past is eternal, or it came out of nothing. So we have two options. Now the argument for motion says let's just assume for the sake of argument that the past is eternal. And the argument for motion is not talking about God flicking the first domino and starting a chain reaction. It's talking about the existence of motion at any particular point in time, at any point in the universe, whether it's eternal or not.
Can I add another degree of freedom here, like another variable? Why does it matter if there is a God? Like using Pascal's wager, but on its head.
Okay, but we're not discussing. We're discussing.
Why does it matter? No, I know. I'm just adding that variable. I literally said that's what I was doing.
I mean, it does.
Even-
The position of the prime mover is just that the universe might exist, and beyond that, there's no need to talk about God. Because whenever people talk about God, they talk about praying, demanding some aspect to him, or adhering to some ethical codes. And the prime mover doesn't attribute that.
I think you're getting ahead of yourself,
those
though.
aspects of God.
I mean, because we can talk about
I mean,
that stuff, but we can't really talk about whether we should pray to God until we establish that God exists.
I mean, no, but I'm saying
I would like
God
him to exist. It's a nice idea.
No. My point is that even if you make the concession that okay, maybe some God exists and was the prime mover that created everything, you need evidence for everything supporting all those further positions, which there is not. And at that point, there is no need to talk about God.
Well, that's later on, right?
Yeah.
That's
After establishing the existence of God, you can show the attributes of God later on.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think because there are arguments for the rest of the attributes of God. I just don't want to get ahead of ourselves because if you don't even accept that there's such a thing as a first mover or a first cause, then it seems kind of pointless to talk about what attributes that first mover or first cause has.
But at that point, you're basically agreeing. Do you agree that God exists? Yes or no? And it's just,
Well, no, we're making an argument for the fact
the prime
that
mover is just.
A prime mover could also be a force. Like a prime mover does not have to be some sort of conscious thing as we understand it.
It's just chaos theory.
The argument I would usually make is that, well, okay, this prime mover argument might be true, but by calling it God, you're sort of anthropomorphizing it, giving it a consciousness.
I think that it's the other way around. I think that you guys are anthropomorphizing it, and by God, we just mean the prime mover.
So you mean chaos?
You're importing a bunch of religious notions into a philosophical argument.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
I will put that in the category of I will remember that later.
But doesn't that mean that you're not actually praying to a being, like a supernal being? If you just think, oh, it's just some thing that happens, some chemical reaction, you're basically saying, oh, well, we believe science and that's why we believe in God. I don't get.
Well, no. I think there's a problem here, which is the nature of the proof here and the way what first mover means. So first mover really ultimately, in the way that the argument for motion works, is saying that that within a simultaneous chain of causes that sustain motion at any moment, the first member of that chain causes motion without itself being in motion or being moved to cause anything.
Yes.
We have an unmoved mover, and so it's not merely first in time. On this account, a chemical reaction is something that is triggered by some prior emotion.
Well, no.
So
See,
that would not be a first mover.
No,
on the philosophical notion.
That's what I tried to get at earlier, is that we don't know what the laws of physics were like at the first opening seconds of the Big Bang. It's possible that you could have had situations where things were going into motion that had nothing facilitating that motion, nothing caused that motion, that the laws of physics were fundamentally different.
That the argument denies that anything could suddenly pop into existence from nothing without a cause, including motion. So the basic idea is let's say we have a quantum field, right?
Yeah.
And it's fluctuating, and out of that quantum field there pops something, and it starts moving. Well, we still have a change in this in the sense that there's fluctuations. So fields fluctuate. Either fields just fluctuate, and there's no cause of that.
That's what I'm saying.
It's just a brute fact, right? Okay. Or there has to be a cause, and the argument here is the brute fact account is not satisfactory.
It doesn't matter if it's not satisfactory. We don't know what it was like.
Wait. No. I understand. I see what you're saying as far as being brute, but the argument against that being a brute fact would be that the basic features of, say, water being heated, or a ball flying through the air, or any other macro level motion. It doesn't have to involve the law of physics. Laws of physics determine how the motion is caused, but not what change is universally. So fluctuations would be changes. Water heating would be a change. In both cases, you have something that's able to be different than it is now, and then it becomes different. Well, where did the difference come from? It didn't come from the thing that's able to be, but actually isn't hot. It doesn't come from the thing that's able to be in a different eigen state, but actually isn't in that eigen state.
No,
so
sure,
it's going
but
to ultimately. So that would be the response to why change at all in any way, no matter how it's accomplished.
Well, the point here is that it may not have even been changed. Like I said, like, we don't know what the laws of physics were like. It may simply be that certain particles or certain atoms at the moment of the Big Bang, in the first microseconds, seconds of the Big Bang, one of their properties is it moves.
Right, and like the fact
where does that property come from?
It's just intrinsic. It's just intrinsic. It's just an intrinsic property.
The fact that we don't know whether there's one universe or multiple universes.
So wait. So you think that the property exists in virtue of itself?
Well, so for instance, we have like particle spin, for example. Spin is just an intrinsic property of a particle. You can have, like, there are properties that are just intrinsic of things, and it could just so happen to be that at the beginning of the universe, there you had particles that their intrinsic property is this particle moves.
I think you're describing it though as like a state of actuality, like you're as if it's not actually change, is essentially what you're describing it as. Because if spin is change in the sense of like an actualization of the potential, then it isn't intrinsic, because it begins by being potential, like the actuality of the spinning.
It's not uniform over time, right?
Yeah, the actuality of the spinning is not in the thing that's changing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to change. It has to be potential with respect to the change before it can change. And the thing is, like, you guys talk about like laws of physics at the beginning of the universe, but this isn't really about laws of physics. It's about principles of being.
It's metaphysics.
It has to do with like what it is to exist. And as long as something exists at the beginning of the universe, it's, these principles of being are going to apply.
So then, your god is like, I mean, like the Greek god of like Gaia emerging from chaos sounds more convincing than like, and then he touched the seed and it like exploded.
I don't think that your seed analogy is really capturing the point. It doesn't have to do with origins.
The seed, the fetus, whatever. Like the
it doesn't have to do with origins and time. It has to do with the existence of change. Why does nature physics studies change, right? Why is there any change in the universe? Why isn't the universe just completely static?
Because it just eternally. It just is.
And
there's no answer to that.
And that I think I'm glad you say that, because I think that's the fundamental dispute, right? It has nothing to do with the laws of physics. It has nothing to do with some origin point of the Big Bang. It has to do with whether or not change in whatever way, following whatever laws, is a brute fact that just happens, or whether the fact that there is change in the universe requires explanation.
Well,
I mean, how do you know that wasn't just invented by some like lone actor, like outside of the universe? Like you don't.
Daniel, let Rico Fag finish his point.
Oh no, I was just going to make the point that you're kind of wrong regarding physics, because physics is trying to study the properties of reality and matter. So to some degree, it is irrelevant, but it's still tied to metaphysics in that we can only point to reality as it is. It just is. And explaining that reality, you can't explain anything beyond that. You could just point to the fact that reality is the way it is.
But if there is a God would be part of reality.
Wait a second. I thought we weren't talking about a God. I thought we were talking about a prime mover.
That's what I mean by God.
Prime mover, but that's...
Okay.
That's what I mean by God right now.
Well, then, for the purposes of just this part of the conversation, I would prefer it if we stuck to the word prime mover, or the phrase prime mover.
Sure, there must be an unmoved mover, which is the source of which is the ultimate source of change, which itself is not changing.
Right. So
then why
is
didn't
not
he just say
undergoing
so?
change.
So the main concession that is happening on this is that you guys are basically talking about the law of identity and mistaking cause and effect for being entities or just acting according to their potentiality.
I don't understand how you're invoking Leibniz law here.
I'm sorry?
I don't understand your use of Leibniz law here.
Well,
The law of identity, Leibniz law, I don't understand how you're using it. Can you expand?
Well,
Just mentioning it, it's not clear to me. So can you explain?
Okay, so when you're talking about the prime mover, generally what occurs is that you're mistaking the law of identity, which is just entities just act according to their nature. And
I've never heard that referred to as law of identity, but whatever, that's phenomenological.
Regardless. So, but the problem with this is that whenever people talk about cause and effect, they tend to conflate the two together, which is to mean that all entities acting according to the potentiality must be brought by their previous act in a continual chain, deterministic recursive chain, which brings you back to God. But the law of identity doesn't have to act according to that way. Entities just act according to how they are, and there's no need to talk about God or a prime mover.
So let me attack your come at this from a different angle then.
Yep.
So let's lay out several options for how we could for possibilities that would account for motion, right? So one is motion just exists, period. It's just a fact. Change it's just a fact. It happens in different ways. There's laws that kind of describe how it unfolds. But the fact of motion is just brute. There is no reason why. It just is because it is. There's no more intelligibility than that.
Yep.
The second possibility. Obviously. Right?
That's the atheistic position.
But the second possibility, right, which it seems like you're talking about with your law of identity point, would be that certain things are the source of their own motion. So it's not that motion just exists, but where does motion come from? It comes from them. Why? Because of the type of things they are. They're the type of things that move. That's not the same as saying they just move. They're just saying they move because of what they are, which implies there's something more fundamental in their nature that is the source of motion versus just saying a brute. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I'm pretty sure that's Aristotle's position regarding essentialism and entities just acting
no, but not when it comes to motion, because motion's an accidental change. So the only self-movers that Aristotle recognizes are the soul and God or the divine. No, that's what he says. Go read De Anima, book 1, for the soul being a self-mover. It's unmoved, and then go read Physics 7. And Metaphysics for God is the prime mover of all other things. Unless you want to get teleology.
Yeah, well, sure.
We're wrong then. Right.
I don't disagree that like things today are not necessarily self-movers, but that doesn't mean, like I said, like doesn't mean things at the beginning of the universe weren't.
So then the argument for motion would presume two things, right? That would cut against, or that would differ with both these positions, right? One, it would hold that any change of whatever sort, whether macro, micro, at any time, requires explanation in terms of an external mover. That everything that is undergoing motion must be moved by something other than itself. In this way, that's physical. Secondly, it denies the bruteness, the brute fact of motion. It says no, that requires an explanation. There must be a sufficient reason for that. And then secondly, as far as the other point, it would say that look, if you have no motion and something starts moving, what's the source of that change where it starts moving? It would seem to have to be a prior motion. Thus, motion would seem to always exist, and therefore something can't move itself because it would have to provide itself with the motion which it lacked. And so therefore, since it has to already have the motion which it did not have, it would both be moving and not moving at the same time prior to moving, which would be a violation of law of non-contradiction. And so that would be the argument against against the idea that against the idea of the nature of the physical thing is the source of the motion. And then the bruteness, we would just say, well, look, macro motions require explanation in terms of something other than the mobile which is changing. So that would be true of any sort of change. This is a universal fact of change. And if you want to use metaphysical terms, yeah, that's a metaphysical or pre-empirical analysis. This is a presupposition that we bring into what we think change is when we do physics, not something that's determined by empirical observation of the laws of nature.
Okay, so whenever something changes, it has to be the thing that is changing into has to be contained by something else.
The thing that is undergoing the change that change must be caused by something other than the thing undergoing the change. And the ability and the power, force, whatever is causing the change, has to in some manner contain what is brought about in the thing that changes. Although we can say that there's that there's not a simple one-to-one correspondence, right? You can heat water and it doesn't change color, but you heat certain other substances and they do change color, right? The changing color is a secondary effect of heat being present in that kind of body. So the fire doesn't have to be the color that the body changes into. It makes it hot, and then a secondary effect of, well, when heat's in this body, it chemically changes color, right? So the cause does have to contain the act, which it brings about in the thing that changes, but it doesn't have to contain every single act that is brought about. There can be secondary effects that are a result of the direct change.
Okay, so God would be like this, well, the prime mover, I guess, would be like this final substance of existence that contains all this information. Let's put it that way.
I don't know about the term information, but I would just say that that there has to be something which gives which bestows actuality and actualizes these potentials, since the things that are changing don't have the full actuality that they are gaining. That has to come from something else that is fully actual. That thing which is fully actual doesn't get its actuality from something before it, so it's a first mover, right? Unmoved, because nothing is giving it actuality. It's actual and it gives actuality, but it doesn't get actuality from anything prior to it. Thus, there must be a prime mover, a first cause, a first actualizer that itself is not actualized by something prior to it.
Any thoughts?
Oh, I mean, I've spoken my piece on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has anything to say about it, but I've spoken my piece. Huh?
I mean, it seems like a chicken and egg argument. Like, I don't know.
Well, no, it's literally saying that it's not a chicken or egg argument. It's saying that there must be some source that is not generated, which is the cause of generation. That's not chicken or egg, since the unmoved mover's motion doesn't come from something else, whereas the chicken comes from an egg, but the egg comes from a chicken, right? There you have a regress. With an unmoved mover, we say that the regress in actualizers must terminate in something that actualizes, but itself does not receive its act from anything else. It just is actual.
Yeah,
and you can say look that's fundamental fields or whatever. But the basic point of the unmoved mover argument, because proving God is immaterial, comes later on to the theistic argument. We're just saying there's got to be some fundamental thing that's fully actual, that's the source of all other.
I mean, having one like being, even if they're supernal, in charge of all movements.
It doesn't have to be one being. There has to be a kind of being. It has to be a sort of thing. They can do the same thing.
It could technically be multiple things.
It could be multiple things on this description, because we're describing a role, not a single entity.
Yeah.
The argument of the unmoved mover and all the classical theistic arguments aren't arguing for God, the individual named Yahweh or whatever. They're arguing there's a kind of thing that is generally recognized, or at least classically has been called a divine being, a supernatural being, or whatever. There must at least be one of these kinds of things, which we are here minimally defining, or minimally asserting of all the notions of God that are held. We're asserting that there is something that meets one aspect of the common conception of God, which is ultimate cause of motion that itself is not actualized or caused.
Yeah. O'Reilly, if Bukowski was here, he'd say that they're trying to argue for the God of philosophy right now.
That is
no, sure. Yeah, no, I got it. I'm just saying I don't think I think there's sort of like trying to apply the rules that exist today onto what existed before, and I don't think that's right.
Well,
do you think the analysis change in terms of an actualization potential is only true because of the laws of physics now, or do you think that that's just a generic universal analysis of what change itself is? I mean, even if you look at, say, Russell's definition of change, right, it involves a difference between states of affairs at time one and time two. There's a difference. Something exists at time two that didn't exist at time one, right? That's just a general analysis that I don't think depends on a particular set of laws of motion.
Why can't that something be God though? Like, why can't it be like, oh well, God didn't exist in time one and now he exists in time two?
Well, because we're not talking about God directly. We're saying the fact of motion, in fact, of change wouldn't exist unless there was such a thing that caused these changes in this way. That itself is uncaused. So change wouldn't exist. Change can't be understood or explained without this. So if you're not going to take change as brute and as it just is, we don't know why it's not intelligible. You just have to accept it. It requires an explanation, and this explanation, we're going to say whatever the answer to this question is, we're going to call that God. The answer to the question would have to be something that itself is not caused. That's all we're saying. So,
I mean, here's the question: do we really need to call it God, or
that's
why
the
not
other?
Call it just the prime mover rather than God?
We can call it the prime mover, but then the ensuing arguments are gonna say, look, this a prime mover would have to be based off analysis of what something that is actual, that is not actualized by another, be something that lacks potential. Because its act is not a realization of potential, because all potentials have to be realized by something other than the subject, which has the act. So such a being would not be material, would not have any material composition.
I mean,
would be identical with its own nature. Would be pure existence. We're starting to sound a lot like the notion of God would be on a particular metaphysical interpretation of perfection and goodness, would be perfect and good, would be eternal,
like you're confusing identities.
Would be infinite, et cetera, et cetera,
all
et cetera.
Of this,
so from this notion, we derive the properties
none of these things are necessary for this. None of these things are necessary for this.
You're just making claims out of nowhere without.
Generally that is my problem. Yeah, generally that is my problem with these.
Well,
because
okay, guys, let's say so that we can move the conversation forward. All right, can we at least, for the sake of the argument, like accept that there's this prime mover, and then we could start to talk about whether or not we can get into other attributes.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I disagree.
I disagree, but it's fine. I'm willing to move on.
The prime mover is just a mistake regarding motion and bringing that the endpoint of that thought process that all motion must come from something, and therefore there must be a prime mover. That started it all.
I mean, we don't even know if the prime mover is from our universe, honestly.
Well, no, that's beside the point. The point is arguing about metaphysics and
I mean, we can stick on this if you want. Like, I think that the issue is that when we're talking about the principle of causality, or PSR, we're ultimately talking about a law of being. We're not talking about something that is
metaphysics.
It's not something that's contingent, like laws of physics, which have to do with like how do things move given their particular natures. This is like how are things, how do, it's not perfect, but something like how do they behave given the fact that they are beings, which is going to apply to everything that is a being. Which, unless you're saying that the things at the beginning of the universe are not beings, like that, in which case, why should we care about them, right? Then these laws of being are going to apply to them. So
that is exactly what we could say, though. Like we could say, like, oh, there wasn't any life at the beginning of the universe. What if, and then life came forward, and then it like invented, more life, and I mean, like, how come we can't say that? Like, well, what's stopping us from declaring, oh, well, like, the Big Bang was just like, it was like biogenetical.
I'm not,
also that like
I'm not really sure how you would come to that conclusion, like, because we're making an argument from the fact that things that change are the first potential, and then their actuality they do not have in virtue of themselves, right? So the only other option is that they have the actuality in virtue of another. So
but that argument ignores the whole like miracle that is life. Like it's like it just like minimalizes it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, Daniel,
can you not, Victor? It minimalizes the whole idea of life because it's saying like, oh well, like we were gifted this. It's sort of like a lesser thing to
he's right on about this. The prime mover does not mean that life was created by. I mean, you could infer that. You could argue that everything within creation was brought by a prime mover, and included was life down the road. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's another thing that we have to be careful about, because it seems like you guys are still kind of thinking about this like a deistic God, like as if God started the universe at the beginning and then things just kind of played out from there. That's not our view. Our view is that literally everything that exists is here and now being sustained in existence by God. So, if something's moving, ultimately,
I get that.
yeah. So it's not like God created the Big Bang and then it played itself out.
Yeah,
no, I get that.
Would it be a good analogy to say that, like, in this context, God or the prime mover would be like the final particulate of existence?
It would be better if you didn't use any analogies, but
I don't know if I would define it. I wouldn't define it as a particulate, because that would define God as like a part of things. Like, I would have a problem with like that language. But God is that which is, well, or the first mover. Since we wanted to talk about like prime movers, right? The prime mover is just the first mover in the order of movers. That's it.
Sure. But then you have to jump, like, if you're going to then expand, like, a prime mover once again could simply be a force of nature, like could just be like the strong nuclear force, for example.
Well,
there's no, it doesn't have to be a conscious
there must be some fundamental one. That's all.
Like I said, I'm willing. Yeah, like I said, I'm willing to move on and just for the sake of this argument, accept that. But like, I think myself and the other, Reek Effect don't agree, but we're willing to move on. So yeah,
it's just a problem about defining cause and effect, and there's no point arguing this, because if you agree on the notion of motion, you always have to. It leads to your conclusion of the prime mover, and well, if you don't agree, then you have to just say, well, you're wrong.
I mean,
there's no
I don't know. I don't know if
what would be your alternative definition of motion or analysis of motion then?
Yeah.
Well, I already tried to give it. Unless you were asking something else. I think I misheard you.
I think the thing is, and I don't know if Clarence used to calling you John. Clarent.
Yeah.
I don't
know your syllogisms, dude. Learn them.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to read those logic books you recommended. But yeah, we are. so I don't know how he would think about this, but I mean, I would think that ultimately you're going to, if you're going to deny any kind of like principle of causality, you're ultimately going to run into an issue where you're going to be contradicting like the principle of non-contradiction or like the principle of identity.
Oh no. Again, I'm not. I mean, I'm not, or at least the other person is. I forgot who. We're not denying cause and effect. We're arguing the definition of how cause and effect is applied regarding motion and what in how.
Sure. So what is your understanding of causality when it comes to motion? What
there isn't any. It just entities just are. And there's nothing beyond that.
Okay, so yeah, so for this, I mean, it's basically just getting down to either motion just exists, there's just changes, and they just simply occur, and they don't require explanation because they just happen, or they require explanation, and then there has to be a prime mover. And I think that's the fundamental question here, right? I mean, atheism isn't saying I don't believe in your fairy tale God. Atheism is saying I don't see. Philosophically, it's saying I don't see any need to explain fundamental facts about the universe. They just are. There's nothing behind them.
Yes,
right?
There's no evidence.
And so we got down to the. I mean, that just is that. I like how you put it because you're just getting right down to the part of the issue.
Yes, and again, at that point, there's no point in arguing one way or another. And
but I mean,
to just move
that is denying the PSR.
I mean, if you're going to argue that there's entropy and enthalpy, you know, like there's chaos and chaotic behavior out of like nothing, and like that wasn't previously defined, and like you could probably make an argument out of that. But like what if there was just nothingness before and then there was something? Like that doesn't necessarily mean that like it was like a different set of laws. It means that there was nothing, and then the spark went off and boom, the universe happens.
I mean,
you know?
That's only one possibility. Consider the fact that there could have been something before and then everything died, and then maybe God or whatever just started things back again, you know, or maybe that's just the way reality works. Maybe it operates on cycles. Maybe God fucked up the previous time, tried again. There's multiple conceptual, possible theoretical examples that you can think of.
Maybe
there's no point thinking about them because there's no evidence one way or another.
So,
but I think though, if we could have an exhaustive list of just generalized descriptions of possibilities, right? We could say, okay, look, there's absolutely nothing. That means there's nothing before the Big Bang, and then suddenly something appears without a cause, right? Two, there's something before the Big Bang. There's big crunches and big bangs, right? You know, expansion, contraction cycles, right? Things like that. Fine, I'm willing to entertain that as an explanation for what led to the Big Bang. Or you have a cause that got it all, the cause outside the universe that got the entire universe started at the Big Bang. But that's getting away again from the fundamental disagreement here that we had just pointed out, which is why are things moving, right? Either things are just moving, whether the universe is eternal or not, because they just are, or they're moving because there's something that is causing them to move, which itself is not in motion and does not require anything to make it, which does not require a prior cause that enables it to cause motion. There has to be a fundamental motion in the universe that causes all the other motions, and that motion is either caused or that motion is right? Regardless of timelines and theories of the past, that's the disagreement.
Sure. So like you have stuff like gravity, for example. Like gravity is more or less just constant and fundamental. Just where there is mass, there is gravity.
Yeah. Although no one fucking knows what gravity is, so I think
no one knows. Yeah, nobody has any idea what gravity is.
I do think there's a difference, though.
Ever.
Like when we're talking about like something coming from nothing, that is not even change, actually. So
no, you're sure, but when we're talking about movement, we're talking about the transfer of energy from one object to another object. We're talking about the.
Well, I mean, if you're going to define it that way, then you're going to. if you're going to talk about it that way, then there has to be something prior that is energized.
Does there?
Well, that's what you just said. It's the movement of like one energy to another, but
I mean, transfer is just another way to say movement. It's the movement of energy from one thing to another, right?
Yeah.
Well, why is there movement of energy?
Yeah.
Why is energy moving?
Well, thermodynamics. Thermodynamics says that there's movement because there's a disparity.
I agree that there's a movement. I don't deny the laws of thermodynamics.
Well, yeah, but the reason why is because of a disparity. A disparity.
Well, and how does going to go why is there disparity?
It's because the laws of thermodynamics.
It's just going to come down to it just is. Why just that? It just is.
Yeah, that's the debate.
And if you either you think it just is, or if it's God did it that way. It's really just going to come down to that. And there's
why do the strong and nuclear force do what they do? Well,
God did it, or it just is as it is. And it just acts according to its nature.
Can I ask a question? So I mentioned earlier, like this idea of change when I gave an example of somebody dyeing their hair blue, right?
Yeah, that was not
so.
I don't like that one.
Well, here's my question. It doesn't make sense to say that a person's hair changed to be blue, but it's blue in virtue of nothing.
Spontaneously?
Not even spontaneously, just like, I mean, yeah, ultimately, but I just mean like in virtue of nothing. Like there is no blue dye there. It's just blue. Does that make sense to you guys?
I guess.
No blue transfer.
Because it's just like it's just like all this. It's just like it. Basically, it requires you to say that the hair is blue, but it's not blue in virtue of its own nature, and it's not blue in virtue of any other nature either. So it's blue in virtue of nothing, which to me seems kind of like a contradiction because like nothing doesn't have any powers. You're attributing, you're kind of reifying nothingness in that case. You're giving nothingness the power to make things blue.
I mean, actually, if the laws of sorry.
I was just gonna ask, are we like bringing in the electromagnetic spectrum here? Like, are we bringing in like electromagnetism?
No, there's literally nothing making it blue. Like it's just like
no, the electromagnetic spectrum is making it blue.
No, I'm positing
white to blue. Nothing. There's no chemicals added. Nothing acts on the hair. It just suddenly is blue, and nothing interacts with it.
If the laws of physics didn't apply before the universe was occurred, right? And then suddenly they did, and it's completely possible. As a mathematician who studied like physical phenomena and stuff, I can tell you that a shockwave, 2 shockwaves occurred at the beginning of the universe, and it was 3 shockwaves occurred at the beginning of the universe and created like the Big Bang. It's completely possible that like there was nothing, no laws of physics, and then suddenly, boom, ranking Hugo-Not.
So I think that's like I think that's describing substantial change, though. It's not describing what we're really getting at, which is that because like even if like at one time there was nobody and then all of a sudden somebody with blue hair popped into existence, we would still say that person with blue hair has blue pigment in his hair. Whereas I think in order to say, but the thing with change is we start out with a person with no blue pigment in his hair, right? In order to change from being potentially blue hair to actually blue hair, you've got to start out with no blue pigment in the hair. Okay, and so what you're saying is, whenever it changes from no blue pigment to blue, from no blue color to blue color, there is nothing. There's no blue pigment that's going on there. There's nothing there.
No chemical change.
There's
no dying.
But there's just like there's nothing. Like you, even if you say that there's that it's blue in virtue of blueness, then you're still
or electromagnetic spectrum or whatever.
No,
you're
saying
still
that science still exists. We're just saying it's not God.
But if you're still,
I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding.
We're not even talking about God at this point. We're just talking about causality. In order to say that nothing is responsible for the color in the hair, you would actually have to say also that there is no blueness in addition there. There's no additional blueness that wasn't there before. Because that would be a cause of the blueness.
And a new state of affairs begin to exist without a cause of any sort.
Yeah, because like I think you guys are thinking of this as like some kind of, we call it a per accidens cause, like some kind of thing that was some kind of event that's prior to what is to the dye. It's like, so like say like some bottle of dye, and you're thinking of it in that term. So we're saying that no, even the pigment itself in the hair, that would be that would count as a cause of the change of hair color.
I mean, if we're using this as an analogy to the Big Bang and the prime mover, then I don't.
Not to the Big Bang.
That has nothing to do with the Big Bang. Daniel.
Thanks, Richter.
Get off the Big Bang, man.
I have no clue what is even being argued at this point.
Blue hair.
Yeah, but I don't.
I mean, what Tomistic is arguing, he's arguing for the principle of causality. He's arguing against Hume. He's arguing against the Humean denial of causality.
Nobody here denies causality. I mean,
yeah, Hume's wrong. I'm not sure. Hume's an idiot.
Well, I agree. So if there must have been a cause, right? If there must have been a cause, then we're working with something, right? And so then Tomistic's application would then in general be any change that you say just is. Tomistic would say no, change due to its very nature requires a cause outside of the thing changing.
Right, because
things don't just change in their own nature. They don't just evolve. That would ultimately, when you get down to brute fact, in that case, you're saying, well, I see the thing changing and I don't observe the cause, so I observe this is just what it does, unlike every other change. And the response is, well, that seems a bit arbitrary.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Real quick, here's the thing. Whenever we describe change, we're talking about it, in a sense, gaining some form of actuality. So that's going to be an actuality that the thing doesn't have intrinsically beforehand, before gaining it. And what you're basically saying, whenever you're saying there's like a gain in actuality or a change without a changer, or without some kind of actuality, you're basically saying there's a gain in actuality without a gain of actuality. It's sort of like saying that. It's a contradiction. Or right. You're saying the gain of the actuality is in virtue of nothing.
I'll simply kind of restate my position here with the hopes of like maybe we can move on. Like all I'm really saying is that we don't know what the laws of physics were like before the universe. We don't know what the laws of physics were like when the universe first began. It's possible that change could happen without a changer. It's possible that, yes, you could have things just randomly happening, randomly popping into existence. But even if there was a prime mover, a first mover, I don't think it's a good argument for the existence of God. I think it's far more likely that a prime mover would have just been a force of nature, and I'm kind of like, that's kind of where I'm at.
See, I just to interject 1 second. So one of the key aspects is that I'm just adding to that. I would even make the case that whether or not there is a prime mover or not, anything regarding God requires evidence for his interaction with reality itself, and on that basis, that becomes the stronger point of whenever people talk about God, rather than just the prime.
Well, the evidence here would be change. Here, we're saying change only exists because of God. Well, no, it's a metaphysical point. So change exists because of God.
Well, no, reality.
An alternative explanation, which is it doesn't.
No,
and
reality exists because of God, which led to motion. It doesn't say that God is the result of motion and controls motion. That's two different things.
But I'm not sure about your. I think you misspoke when you said result. God is the result of motion. Another knowledge of God comes from
God is the effect of motion and
no,
everything.
God is not the effect. God is the cause.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my bad. God is the cause of. I'm mixing the two. God is the cause of everything that is affected in reality, but that doesn't mean that. Fuck, I had a point. I forgot.
I mean, it seems that when you're talking about interaction, right? That would seem to mean that there's something that occurs that is not not explicable in terms of laws of physics, right?
Yes.
Okay, and the classical theistic argument is saying we're not talking about that. We're not offering an alternative to a scientific explanation. We're saying behind the scientific explanation, as I said earlier, there's a more fundamental question that needs answering. The atheist says, I don't think why motion exists at all, why change has ever existed, or could ever existed, needs an explanation. It just is a fact, and I don't ask why about that. And
no, I'm willing to ask the question, why does motion exist?
No, why do you should? You said you should. Why? Why can't you not accept reality? It just is as it is, and why do you have to?
Well, when you say what do you mean when you say just is as it is, right? Or are you saying that if I accept that things are changing, right? I accept that things change, right? I accept that as a fact, but the acceptance of a fact is what is presupposed to asking why.
No.
So a why question arises because I recognize that a fact that is true requires explanation. It does not account for itself.
A fact just simply is. It is truth. It is what it is. It doesn't require a why. Why you just presume that all facts require a why without making a judgment for making an explanation for why.
No, I am making the claim. I'm making the claim.
I'm asking by what standard can you make that claim?
All contingent facts, get back to the PSR, all contingent facts require a why, require a reason. Change
only
something.
Well, then if it's a fact that all facts require a reason why, then give a reason why.
Yeah.
Because it just is. That would be.
We're getting to first principles, right? First principles.
Okay, so in other words, because it just is. Got it. Because it just is. All right. Yeah.
They're not
we've train wrecked. We've completely train wrecked. Oh my god, we've totally fucking train wrecked. Oh my god.
Metaphysics.
Well, we actually agree that there's a first thing of which there's something that's self-explanatory. In other words. And that's where the sort of regress starts.
No, oh my god, oh my god, oh no, please don't make the train wreck worse.
Okay, so I'm just gonna
pull it back.
Okay, so here's the thing. For example, if I just say that the sky is blue, it just is. Okay, but you can ask further ahead. Okay, why is the sky blue? And can you get for more evidence and an explanation for why it is? But merely stating facts just are. They just are. There's nothing beyond that. And stating that things are they are doesn't presume a why. You can only if a person wants to know why is it presumed. I hope that made fucking sense because I'm kind of losing it too. And he was making the fact that just saying the sky is blue always demands that there is a why behind it, and I'm denying that there is that claim. He is making that claim because it presumes his position that God requires an explanation to all things, which is in regards to motion. Oh, fuck. In factual statements.
I would not say every single fact in itself requires a proper explanation. Facts which we recognize require explanation, like the sky is blue, is a fact, and we can recognize this needs an explanation. And upon recognizing it's the kind of fact that requires explanation, we then recognize there must be a reason. I am maintaining that change is such a fact.
Well, you don't need to. You could just say the sky is blue and it just is. You can
that is saying I don't have to be interested in it. You don't have to be interested in it to recognize that it's true. I recognize motion exists, and I'm interested in why it exists. And if you don't give a shit as to why it exists, fine. You don't have to ask why. But I'm saying there is a why to be asked, as opposed to saying that one is a number. Why? That's just what it is, right? That's a misguided question.
Well, yeah, but I would argue that on the questions of metaphysics, it just ends there because you can't know anything further than that. It just is.
Do you think we can know anything by reason without direct empirical observation testing?
Yes.
Or okay, well that's where we would differ here. That I think that there could be rational argument and knowledge that goes beyond mere empirical observation. I'm not an empiricist.
I disagree. I mean, my epistemological position is that everything requires evidence, or else there's no reason to believe it. And anything that starts with, or that is argued through logic, can be dismissed out of hand because it can be just recursive or just rationalism or pure rationalism.
I don't
relates to reality.
I don't agree with that. I think you can rationalize through a lot of things. My whole thing though is I believe.
But you still need some evidence to build it off, or else.
Well, sure, yeah, you need evidence to build it off of, and B, your rationalization must always come second. Like if evidence comes up that disproves the rationalization has to be dropped. Is the first thing. And because it's clearly wrong.
That gives rise to a why for you.
No. I'm not saying there is evidence here that directly contradicts the why. I'm just saying, in general, my philosophical position is rationality is subordinate to empirical evidence. When empirical evidence is available.
Specifically, though, when it comes to the fact in question, right, is motion brute? That is, there is no why.
No. Once again, I'm not applying this to this specific discussion. That's not what I'm doing. I'm merely stating my personal beliefs here, which is that I believe that this is how this has to be handled in most cases when evidence is available. Unfortunately, this is one of those cases where evidence really isn't available.
Yeah, because it's again beyond physics. It's metaphysics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think the proposition that there is a prime mover could be, because this is my position, like I'm not 100% sure it's true, but I think it's plausible that there could be such a thing as a prime mover.
Yeah, I'm willing to toy with the idea of there being a prime mover. I'm just not entirely certain I'm willing to accept that it's God.
Yeah. No, that's completely fine. I think it's plausible that there could be a prime mover. I think it's necessarily God.
And I'm not, like Richter will tell you, like I'm not even hostile to the concept of a God. I don't think this is a good argument for God. I don't.
Well, I don't think just asserting that the laws of physics could be different in the past is a good argument against the principle of sufficient reason. So.
Awesome. I don't think stating that you have to have a mover to define movement is sufficient either. So we're in an impasse, and we either move on or we don't.
We can move on to the next step. We've agreed to it, like it's plausible, so we can move on to the next step.
Like I think this is you get this from like theology type people, and it's like no, you're just like you're asking that like the laws of physics are constant and permanent, and we have no idea if it's true.
It isn't even actually about the laws of physics; it's about metaphysics.
But when we get to the realm of metaphysics, we're starting to get into the realm of like we can't prove any of this stuff, so it's all just the ancient saying once said, we're arguing about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin.
Yeah, that's a straw man. So let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of metaphysics. All right, being cannot be non-being.
Yeah, that's the law of non-contradiction.
Is that something that we cannot know with certainty?
Yes.
Sorry, let me put that again because I'm not sure. Can we know with certainty?
We know this for certainty.
We do know it's with certainty?
Everything that is, yes, because nothing, you could literally see that everything is stable and solid, and a dog does not literally transform into a cat, and everything transforms nonstop in what's it called? Heraclitus, the fucking Greek philosopher, Greek fire philosopher. Heraclitus. Everything is not in continual flux, where everything is in constant motion. There is everything. It remains their own identity.
Well, regardless, like my point is that the principle the principle of non-contradiction is known with certainty, and this is a principle we find in metaphysics. So therefore, there are things in metaphysics that we know with certainty. In fact, I would argue that they are actually the basis of any knowing at all, and that we start out by knowing these sort of first principles that come from metaphysics, and science is based on that, and so it has to be more certain than even science and like sort of the way that we would go about with empirical evidence of proving things through science.
I mean, that's true, but I don't think the that matters.
Well, I mean,
Ayer
Ayer was saying that
sure
metaphysics wasn't certain, and that's why we cannot
no
take
metaphysics
serious.
is certain.
Well,
he
was
reality exists and everything remains what they are.
Well, the thing is,
I'm not sure what was this point.
Well, my thing is, I think that the principle of causality is a principle of metaphysics, and I think it's going to be, I think it's certain that it's true. Whereas Ayer was saying that no, because it's metaphysics, therefore it's uncertain, and angels dance on a head of a pen or something. So I'm arguing against
more
that.
The composition of the no. Okay, so I think I understand the difference. So what you're basically arguing is that no, we do know that reality is true because we're observing reality as a constant, and what Ayer's arguing is that we don't really know the composition of reality as a whole because we can't go outside of reality or we can't talk to God directly, and
but we know
to rationalize what we do know or don't know outside of those facts is impossible to know. Like we don't know if there's a prime mover, or there's multiple prime movers, or there has or whether or not.
But we do know the principle of non-contradiction applies.
Yes, but the principle of non-contradiction arrives by looking at reality and noticing that cats don't just transform into dogs; they remain their own identity. By knowing that,
I mean, kind of, but it's not like
or not.
I think that there's an issue here, though.
That is also B.
It sounds
A is not B. That is also A at the same time, which is we can infer that A is A, the law of identity. But the point, nonetheless, is that things nonetheless remain what they are because they can't be something else at the same time.
I think that there's kind of a more fundamental issue, which is that maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like you guys think that we kind of infer these principles of metaphysics from empirical evidence, and
I mean, no, I
would make the case that this is just ingrained. I mean, this is making an evolutionary case, but I would argue that the law of non-contradiction is ingrained within people's psychology, and the law of identity specifically because it helps remember, keep track of.
I mean, as long as we agree that it applies universally to all things insofar as they exist, I'm fine with that. But it sounded like earlier you were saying that we can't know that these sort of things apply to things beyond what we've experienced, such as the Big Bang and stuff like that.
Well, the Big Bang is kind of an unknown, so.
But we know that the principle, we know the principle of causality, the principle of non-contradiction would apply to the Big Bang, don't we?
No. If we know anything about
all right, so that's where the major difference is. You guys, I think that's going to be a big problem. I think that's going to be a very big problem if you're going to say that the principle of non-contradiction might not be true in certain circumstances.
No, it is true. It's just at the beginning of everything, who fucking knows is the position.
Yeah, it's plausible that it could be true. It's plausible that it could not be true.
Yeah, I'm not making the case that the principle of non-contradiction didn't apply at the Big Bang. It's more.
Well, the way I like to put it is this: is like general relativity is right 98% of the time, even more than 98% of the time. It's right 99.8% of the time. But there's these little things in the margin where it's not good, and you have to move to special relativity, and that's okay. It's that doesn't mean general relativity is wrong.
I think you guys are way off because I don't think that I don't think you could say anything at all without the principle of contradiction, and I think
you can, insofar as a person in the time of Aristotle could have said something, can say something. I think insofar as it matters for our everyday lives, you can. I just also think that when you get to the edges, when you get to the margins, or you get to the places where the dragons are on the maps, I think that's where there's problems.
No, because look, in order to even specify any particular thing, you have to say it's not that, right? So in order to say so for example, if we're talking about the Big Bang, right? The Big Bang is not what is existing now, right? I am not the Big Bang. You are not the Big Bang. all of these other things are not the Big Bang. And so you're saying that, well, the principle of causality applies now, principle of sufficient reason, principle of non-contradiction applies now, but doesn't apply to the Big Bang, maybe, right? But to do that, you have to already accept the principle of non-contradiction, because you have to say that the Big Bang is not now.
Well, there's actually an argument that the Big Bang is still ongoing.
Okay.
Well, that's semantics.
That's a little far-fetched, but okay.
That's more
What's
semantics.
the argument for that? That's
Oh, well, the idea there is that, like, when we talk about, like, the early seconds of the universe, what we're actually talking about is the dying death throes of the last universe, and this universe didn't truly begin until the laws of physics solidified.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's actually not a bad argument. I don't know if I fully agree with it, but it's not a bad argument.
But we have to accept.
Who knows? It sounds plausible, but there's no evidence, and you can never know anything.
You can never know. Yeah.
All the evidence for knowing that would be basically dead.
But to even claim that the principle of non-contradiction, claim that the principle of non-contradiction might not apply to the beginning of the universe, you have to accept the principle of non-contradiction. So there's really no way out of this. There's no way of accepting
you're arguing into a hat, because again, we're not disagreeing that the principle of non-contradiction doesn't apply how can I say this? We are basically agreeing on the principle of non-contradiction. It's just that we're giving it a pass because because the beginning of everything is so tenuous that we don't.
But we know with 100% certainty that the principle of non-contradiction applies to the Big Bang. That's my claim.
By what evidence? Because that's
because to even distinguish, to even say the words Big Bang, you have to accept the principle of non-contradiction. To even the concept itself requires
being able to talk about
that.
It is not. I don't understand. Being able to talk about the Big Bang is not a prerequisite to describing what the conditions of the Big Bang and why metaphysics and reality were in a tenuous spot before matter existed.
What the Big Bang is, in order for there to be such a thing as what the Big Bang is, you have to, as opposed to what we are, for example, you have to accept the principle of non-contradiction. Because the principle...
You're just repeating yourself.
No, I'm not. Because the principle of non-contradiction says that being is not non-being. In order to say that, well, the Big Bang might not, have this principle of non-contradiction, you have to distinguish the Big Bang from us now. But the very claim of the principle of non-contradiction, the claim of, or the denial of the principle of non-contradiction, denies that there are distinctions, because it says that what is not may be what it is. So what is not the Big Bang can also at the same time be the Big Bang, and what is the Big Bang can also at the same time not be the Big Bang. So you're saying, if you deny the principle of non-contradiction, you're essentially saying, or if you deny that the principle of non-contradiction may apply to the Big Bang, you're also denying that it may apply to you and me right now, because you and me right now could be the same thing as the Big Bang and not the same thing as the Big Bang at the same time.
He also Ayler, I forgot your...
I'm Riley. You're on my server.
Yeah, you're on unknown server, right? I remember your I remember your voice.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was making the case that we are all part of the Big Bang, so at the same motion, maybe.
Well, there's an argument for that. I don't know if
there's an argument for that. So
but
making the hellacious argument that maybe what if everyone's the Big Bang and
I'm saying that there's no way of because you guys are saying that it applies now, but it doesn't apply back to the Big Bang. So unless you want to say that it doesn't apply either one, there is a distinction there. If you're saying
Well,
that
we don't know. Like, it couldn't just be. Again, we don't really entirely know what the Big Bang is. All we know is that there's a rapid expansion of matter.
But we know it exists, right?
I think. Well, we know it exists, but
well, we know something. We know something happened. We're not. Yeah, that's things get hazy when you go that far back.
I just shrug and I just say I don't fucking know.
Yeah. So I think there's a fundamental difference in the way that we're taking positions here. So, for example, Riley, I would say that he takes positions based on, well, there's a probability that this could be true, and there's higher probabilities for different things. Whereas you're like, well, we have to be 100% certain about this, and there has to be like no room for.
Let me.
My thing is, there's places in the universe, and both physically and in time, that are so extreme. It's hard to make like hard statements. Like an example for that might be a bit more closer to home. For example, is when we talk about what happens on the other side of an event horizon of a black hole. That's like. It's such an extreme environment. It sort of no longer makes sense.
So so what's on the other side of a black hole would be different from what we know to be now, right? Because
that's my whole point.
Yes. Because it has.
Is there one way that it is on the other side of the black hole that's unknown, or can it, or can we say that? I'm just going to throw out some hypothetical nonsense stuff just for the sake of ease, because I don't know very much about black holes. So if I go on the other side of the black hole,
I'll try to help you as much as I can.
Turn into a chicken. No, they're just.
It's even weirder than that.
Just hypothetically, right? So I'm just going to give two basic fictional scenarios, right? Just to illustrate the point. So we don't know what happens on the other side of the black hole.
Yes.
And let's just assume that there are two options, right? I turn into a chicken, or I turn into a Lamborghini. Just nonsense options. Both can't be true simultaneously. I can't be a chicken and a Lamborghini on the other side of a black hole at the same time, right? We don't know what the correct answer is, but there's a single correct answer. Yeah.
Well, maybe.
I mean, you're making an assumption, and we don't. You're evoking the law of non-contradiction, and we don't fucking know.
So guys,
there must be a right
I think the
answer.
issue is look. So whenever we talk about what happens, the reason why we can't really explain what's going on beyond the event horizon is because beyond that, things are of a different nature than things we experience in physical reality.
That's my whole point.
Right?
That's my whole point.
So
that's my whole point.
So the thing is, I would agree with that. They're of a different nature, but the issue is that they still exist. And so the things that apply to things that exist are going to apply.
Maybe.
So
I mean, you're also making an inference saying that it exists. It's just.
Yeah. Well, if it doesn't exist, then then why should we care about it?
Well, that's also the point.
That's also a question.
Like, if it doesn't exist, it can't affect anything, right? So
well, the Big Bang is another example of that. Like what happens at the Big Bang is very similar conceptually to what happens at the other, beyond the event horizon of a black hole. And if the question here is, well, why should we care what happens there? Then the answer to that is, well, sure. Why should we care about what happened at the beginning of the universe?
Look,
because God and theology and
look. The thing is, so look. If we
open question is an answer.
If we find a planet right along, around a distant star, right, we can know because it's going to have a similar nature to other things that we've applied. We can apply principles. Hold on. Can you let me finish? Based on principles that we've developed here on Earth, since a star that goes around, a planet that goes around the Earth, a different star system, we can make an inference because it has like a similar nature to the Earth. It's going to exhibit similar properties, and so we can use scientific instruments to study this thing because it's going to have a similar nature, right?
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that sure, what lies beyond the event horizon is different in a sense. It has a different nature, but it's not entirely different. It's the same, at least insofar as it exists. And so we can apply what we know about things that exist to anything that exists. Things that are specific to the existence itself, not to the differing natures.
Well, let me give a picture of just how bizarre the environment inside of the event horizon of a black hole is. So, do you know what like a space time diagram is, or like the relationship between space and time is? I'm
somewhat familiar with black holes and all that stuff. So yeah.
Inside of a black hole, there is evidence. Now, mind you, we have no idea what the fuck happens inside of a black hole. All of this is just conjecture and speculation, yada, yada, yada. But there is evidence to suggest that inside of a black hole, the space and time axes flip. And that what we would consider to be space becomes time, functions more like time, and what we would consider to be time functions more like space.
Okay.
That is about as alien of an environment as I could possibly think of.
That doesn't make any sense.
But
that's the whole point. Like, we're talking about an alien environment, like something so completely non-conducive to human life or understanding.
If that's true, then what we have to say is whatever. So we have things outside of the event horizon, and then within the event horizon, there's something different between these two things, right?
Yes, that's my whole point.
Right.
So
that which is different between those two things is not existence.
Yes. Okay, well, fair. We can call it whatever we want, but my whole point is when I say that the law of non-contradiction applies to like 99.999 whatever percent of the universe, what I'm trying to cut out is things like the event horizon of a black hole, where we're talking about situations and places that are either, whether we want to consider them in the universe or outside of the universe, or however we want to consider them, places that are so absurdly alien that like I cannot say with any degree of confidence that if we dropped Celerant in there that he would not turn into a chicken and a Lamborghini at the same time. Okay. I cannot say that with any confidence.
But we know that they're the same insofar as they both exist, right?
Sure.
So if they're the same insofar as they exist, then what it means to exist and all of that entails is going to apply to both of them.
I'll agree that like I think the area where we can bridge the gap here is that I will agree that like insofar as there are things that are in like, you know, the margins and things that are not in the margins, as far as things that are not in the margins are concerned, I think we're all on the same page here. Because
here's the thing, I think that ultimately this idea of the principle of contradiction is with respect to what it is to exist. Because just look at what it is, what we're talking about here, right? We're saying being is not non-being. We're saying what being is. We're saying what it is to exist. We're not talking about specific different natures. We're talking about what it is to exist, which is shared between things in the event horizon and things outside of the event horizon.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood what you're saying. We actually don't know if you exist when you pass the event horizon. We don't know what happens at all. It's possible you cease existing, which becomes even fuckier because depending on where you are observing the incident of, say, we chuck Celerant into a black hole, depending on where you're observing this happening, there can be a situation where, depending on the observer, someone both exists and does not exist at the same time. And the observers would disagree on exactly where they are.
Well, I mean, that would just be this. That would be to say that
you'll be able to make any sense. Jesus Christ.
That would just be to say that the existence of the thing is observer relative. It wouldn't be to say that
it's relative. Yeah, it's relative.
So there would be two different senses in which a thing exists and does not exist at the same time. So even if that were
existence is observer relative.
Well, I'm not sure if I would be willing to accept that, but it's irrelevant. The point is that it does.
I'm not asking you to.
Right. The point is just that wouldn't necessarily, contradict the principle of non-contradiction, because the principle of non-contradiction simply says it has to do with something existing and not existing in the same sense, or you're talking about two different senses here.
Sure. All I'm saying is I think that there are certain situations that are so extreme, it's best to not worry about them. Like I said, once again, as far as the vast majority of the universe is concerned, I'm with you. I'm not going to fight you on it. Like what happens on Earth, like it's not a big deal. I'm just leaving the door open for the fact that like there's like there be monsters out there.
I'm saying it's not possible because just to explain my position, it's not possible because these principles that we're talking about, like the principle of causality, principle of non-contradiction, they apply to what it is to be itself, and things in the event horizon and outside of the event horizon, they both exist, and if they don't exist, then there's no reason to talk about them.
Well, once again, that goes back to the what we were fucking Ricky Fag and I were saying before. Like that's also kind of the point.
Things still exist inside the event horizon. They might change into something else, but they still exist.
Exactly.
I mean,
they might go for a physical process that changes their properties, but it doesn't change their existence itself. Their existence.
The thing in the event horizon exists.
Because everything in the universe
completely not exist at the same time. If the thing exists in some one way, but it can't exist in contradictory ways simultaneously, then that would mean the principle of non-contradiction holds on the other side of the event horizon.
Once again, when we're talking about everything past the event horizon of a black hole, it is 100% speculation.
Okay.
Richard, it breaks down because the mathematics don't work between quantum mechanics and general relativity. It's not like such things don't obey like basic metaphysics.
We have no idea what is beyond like we can't say that. We don't know.
Yeah. Okay,
we can say that because they follow mathematics. Okay, we predict them using mathematics, and mathematics is derived from things like logic. Okay, these are like
sure.
So we wouldn't even be able to describe it if it broke these sort of metaphysical laws. It's just
we're not even entirely certain we can describe them.
That's just we've described everything so far using mathematics. So
well, these things are fucking weird, man.
Okay, Thomistic, look, we have considered like it's plausible that there could be a prime mover. What argument would be made after that? Just taking into account that it's plausible. Okay, we're willing to say that this could be true.
Well, I mean, I think that I think the way that it was being described before is we just have like a prime mover that is not itself moved. So I guess the next part would just be that it's purely actual. I guess that there is no potential in it. Which I mean, if there were potential, you would have an act potency composition, right? So you would have act and potency there. And that would require composition, I think, ultimately requires something in virtue. Well, there's two things. If something's composite, then it depends on its parts for its existence. So that's an issue. We're talking about something that's that's uncaused, right? Because if it depends on something else for its existence, then it's not really what we're talking about when we're talking about like the first thing. The other issue is that if these two parts in themselves are intrinsically diverse in themselves, then we need something else in virtue of which these two things are unified. And so you would also need a cause of the unification of these two diverse parts, act and potency. And so it turns out that you can't really have this first cause be anything other than just pure act itself. So that's the next step.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I don't specifically have a problem with that.
Okay. All right.
I've got a question for you, the Thomistic disputations. What would you say that the fact that causality potentially isn't metaphysical, and that it's just a result of time, like a result of just space time?
Well, we kind of talked about that earlier.
Well, Yeah, we did. And I mean, with respect to space-time in particular, I think that cause and effect are simultaneous. So I wouldn't really accept Hume's view that, causes are prior to their effects. One example of this is that kind of pushes forward that intuition is that if you talk about the cause of butter being cut, for example, right? The knife doesn't cut the butter prior to butter being cut, right? Where in this case, the knife cutting is the cause of the butter being cut, right? But the knife and the knife is cutting the butter at the same time that the butter is being cut, right? So I think that shows, or intuitively, that cause and effect are going to be simultaneous whenever we're talking about that. So I don't think it would depend on time. And another way to think about it is just how holes depend on their parts. And even if there was, so for example, we don't exist without our cells, right? So in a certain sense, our existence depends on our cells, and so there's a certain kind of cause there. And I think that would still be true even if there wasn't any change going on. It would still be the case that we would not exist without our cells. So that's kind of a few different thoughts I would put out there.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence about this causality stuff, but interesting.
Yeah. So I guess you guys would want to know the next part, but I kind of already got there whenever it comes to the composition of parts, because I was talking about the composition of act and potency, right? Well, the same logic that I just gave there with respect to, wholes depending on their parts and parts needing something in virtue of which they're united, that's going to apply to any sort of composition whatsoever. So if we're going to talk about some sort of atom that's composed of parts or something, well, that can't be God, or that can't be the prime mover, right? Because it's composed of parts. If you're using Aristotelian categories, something composed of matter and form, that can't be the prime mover, because matter and form, you got composition of parts there. So it turns out that the thing that we're talking about has to be absolutely simple. It can't have parts. If something is like that, well, it at least has to have existence, right? It can't have something else but not existence, right? So if all that and if it's just one thing and not multiple parts, and it has to at least be existence, well then it just is its existence itself. That's what it is. So that's the next step, to show that God's essence is existence.
I'm back. Sorry, I went to get coffee.
No problem. What do you think about that, Richard?
Are you guys still talking about the law of non-contradiction?
No. We're on to the
okay,
properties of God, or attributes of God now.
Oh, well, I mean, the properties of God is that God has no properties. Ergo, nothing can be talked about him. Therefore, anyone making claims that God is good, God is X, is wrong by default.
Well, you just missed my whole explanation.
Oh, okay. Well,
so
and any arguments for any attributes of God is pure rationalization.
Well, we're talking about. Well, what about we're starting with the prime mover. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, okay. Could you start any argument or any discussion of God without the prime mover?
Not unless you're being religious.
Okay.
Or you could use a different, or you could use a different proof for God, like Leibniz's arguments from contingency. You get to an absolutely necessary being that's not contingent at all. You use Aquinas' other ways. You get to his version of the contingency argument, where you get to an uncaused cause of existence as opposed to prime mover. So we're going to have to start a discussion of God's attributes from one of these notions in order to have any certainty into conclusions. If the proofs work, right, or if you grant them for the sake of argument, that has to be our starting point.
Yeah.
Any other notion of God that you would start with would just be postulated ad hoc.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, since I'm streaming this, I'm gonna go ahead and stop it. It's been going for almost 4 hours now.
Oh.
So.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I
no,
didn't realize you were streaming this. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no,
I hope I didn't say anything inappropriate.
no, I think you were fine.
Why are you saying you're sorry?
But yeah, I'm stopping the stream.